News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. The Wisconsin State Senate Wednesday night passed the controversial anti-union right-to-work bill on a vote of 17 to 15. He sounded like in the Senate gallery when that bill passed.
Senator from the 13th.
Immediately message to the Assembly.
The senator asked unanimous consent that the bill be immediately messaged to the Senate. Assembly. Senator from the 13th.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that we adjourn according to skeleton session tomorrow.
President asks unanimous consent we adjourn till skeletal session tomorrow. Without objection, we're adjourned.
You're either with the worker or with the
Another frigid, snowy winter's day, another Wisconsin labor rally at the state capitol protesting the so-called right-to-work bill. The Republicans are fast-tracking through the state legislature. Wisconsin AFL-CIO President Phil Neuenfeld.
What are we doing here? Well, we're here to fight for a better and brighter Wisconsin. A Wisconsin where all workers have the freedom to a family-supporting job with decent wages and benefits. Where all workers have the right to form a union. We are standing up for democracy and the middle class. Let's keep up the fight. Let's keep the solidarity alive. Together, workers indivisible. Solidarity, unity from one and all.
Labor is rallying again at Wisconsin's capital this Saturday. Bill Carroll is a Teamster with Local 344.
We are here to protest this right-to-work legislation that's being jammed down the throats of working people in this state. The name right to work is an illusion, and it's meant to fool and deceive people. It has nothing to do with the right to work. It has everything to do with eroding workers' voice on the job, unions, and organized labor's influence.
Thousands of United Teachers of Los Angeles members are rallying today to demand smaller class sizes, fully staffed schools, clean and safe schools, and fair compensation for teachers. The LA Teachers Union says labor talks with the district are at an impasse, and they say they're joined in the fight for quality public education by students, parents, and community groups, as well as other teachers' unions in California and beyond. This report made possible in part through underwriting from the Bank of Labor. In Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
I don't want to abolish government. I simply want to reduce it to the size where I can drag it into the bathroom and drown in the bathtub.
You bet I cut the taxes at the top.
How dare you? How dare you? Go ahead, make my day.
The Rick Smith Show starts now.
This town gonna be here long after I'm gone. East side, west side, people don't surrender. They've been down, but they still rock on. Oh, and this time is my time. Alright, love or hate, it don't matter. So I'm gonna stand and fight. This time is my time. She got her ups and downs, but love or hate, it don't matter. 'Cause this is my town.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. What's going on in Wisconsin? Bad free trade deals in D.C. As we speak, I guess they're getting ready on the Senate floor to start ramming this thing through. Just as we're seeing people across the country ramping up to say, not quite so fast. And look, we've been talking about the Trans-Pacific Partnership Free Trade Agreement for since the Bush years, really. Because here again, another bad trade deal birthed during a Republican administration and rammed through during a Democratic administration. So this is one of those things, bipartisan, that working people had better look at both political parties with a jaundiced eye. Because look, at the end of the day, sadly, our political system is based on cash. Who can get them the money that gets them reelected? And that's the sad, sad reality of the state of affairs here. You look at every policy for the last basically 30 years that has gone the way of the corporate class, away from you and me and our families. And it comes back down to, really, honestly and truthfully, nothing more complicated than just the dollars and cents. And you think back to all of the times we've talked about the money the Koch brothers and their ilk have put into building these enterprises, this infrastructure, this intertwined web of media and misinformation, this whole incestuous pool of lies and deceit and deception and half-truths. And this is where we get to a place where they tell us, and we already know, look, we know that this is a job killer. But yet they're hanging to that line. This is going to create jobs. Yesterday, I read the love letter from the Chamber of Commerce to the Trans-Pacific Partnership Free Trade Agreement. Yes, there is a love letter. There is a love letter from the Chamber of Commerce because, look, they love money. There's not a greater aphrodisiac for them. There's nothing that's going to get them all warm and tingly like more cash. And that's pretty simple. And at the end of the day, if we want better for our children, we want better for our grandchildren, we want a better future, a better tomorrow, hell, we want a better today. It's going to take us being involved, active, engaged. It's going to take us being in the streets. It's going to take us getting on the phone, on the Twitter, on the email, the Facebook, all of that. Not just talking to our friends and our neighbors and maybe the guy at the supermarket, but our legislators. And all these people who want to run for office. At some point, we, the people, need to be back in our government. A government of what? Of, for, and by we, the people. Pretty simple stuff, but very difficult to actually move forward. And today in the Capitol, in Harrisburg, there was a big rally. About 400 or 500 people from across the Commonwealth came together and said, you know what? We want a better budget. We want jobs created. We want all of the things that the last 4 years didn't bring. And we're never going to bring. The policies of the Corbett administration, that whole 4-year debacle, that 4-year nightmare, while over, still can't be away from our mind. Because sadly, the people who push that through are still strongly in control of the General Assembly. And it's going to take the pressure on those folks to undo and to get out of the mindset of austerity and cut, and punish and redistribute wealth from the poor and the working class to the corporate class. This is a mindset. All of the things that have happened in this country, really, honestly, all of the things that have happened have been because of policy choices. And, people like to say, well, there are things out of our control. No. Economically, most things are right in the wheelhouse. They were bad policy choices. There were people who were saying from the beginning, these are bad policy choices. And the corporate class wanted them anyway, and we gave in. And you go back to Bill Clinton and look, he's a Democrat. You're supposed to be a Democrat, right? And look, told you. I'll call bad politicians on both sides. And Clinton was economically, at his moment, a good politician, but let himself be sucked into this idea that capitalism had learned its lesson, that Wall Street and the investor class had learned their lesson. And when he undid Glass-Steagall, worst thing he could have done. Because think about it, right at the end of his term, 1999 is when they signed it, went into effect in 2000. 2001, George Bush takes over. We're talking 8 years. 8 years later, our economy is collapsing because of one policy decision. This policy decision that Clinton made with the help of a whole bunch of Republicans. Understand, at the time, the Republican House and Senate, Republicans, and a lot of corporate Democrats, they pushed through Graham Leach Bliley. One of my favorite guys, Tippy Turtle, Phil Graham, the congressman from Texas, was one of the front and center pushing this thing through that allowed banks to become gambling houses. That, all of the risky stuff that, the gambling houses do, now boring old banks can do. And then you can commingle the money. And this is how we ended up in this situation of all of these mortgage-backed securities and all of these derivatives and all of these, as Alan Greenspan called them, very technical, very sophisticated financial instruments that he believed were so complicated that government just could not possibly regulate them. And at the time he said that, which is well before the collapse, I remember going, well, if they're that complex and they're that sophisticated and difficult to understand, why do we have them? And are they a good thing to have? And evidently, my gut reaction was right. No, we shouldn't have. Because even the people who thought they were smart, like Alan Greenspan, they didn't even understand what they were playing with. And they put us in this situation where we're still digging out of it. So instead of following that, the hope is, and this is why people from across the Commonwealth came into Harrisburg today, was to call on a different way of doing things, different budget priorities. And with Governor Wolf in the governor's mansion, with that pen in his hand and next week's budget speech that's coming up, these folks came out and said, look, we want a different direction. We want what you've been promising. And look, I think it's fantastic because I think every politician will tell you, look, I'm going to tell you what I want to do. And if you buy that, you believe it, you want to get behind it, I need the political cover. I need the political capital. I need the marching orders from who? That's right. We, the people. So we give him that by having these events and by pushing, not just him, but also the Republicans who control our General Assembly. And I think that's a good thing. His tax idea, I got tons of responses on. Very few bad responses. Most people thought it was a great idea. Let's take away some of the property tax stuff, lower that, because this is just a shifting of taxes, but it's also a way of creating a progressive tax system that I am all in favor of. And look, I understand. I will probably end up being one of those who pay a little bit more. I'm okay with that. And I think most people are okay with paying a little bit more if they have to, so their kids have good schools, their roads don't look like, I drive into Harrisburg, it looks like Harrisburg was bombed. That's how bad Front Street and Second Street are. It's horrible. I think most people are okay. Hey, is there an alternative way to get to work? Maybe public transportation? Sure. I'd be willing to invest in that. Because understand, your taxes, they're investments. They're investments of the future for our kids in education. They're investment in today for the transportation systems that we have to move us and our goods to and from market and to and from work and back and forth. They're smart investments in technology for tomorrow. Understand, we're not looking tip of the nose right now. We should be, and in the past, as a nation, we have been a society that looks down the road, that invests up to the technological possibilities of the day and then is always searching just that little bit beyond. That used to be this country. And if we were still that country, every community would have broadband access by now. Every community would have, and we wouldn't be, I guess we're like 20th now. During the Bush years, we were 10th. And I used to joke, I used to laugh at the Bush comment, we're 10th. And that's just 10 spots too low, which would have made us 11th, but never mind. No one ever accused him of being very bright. But we were 10th. Now we've fallen to like 20th, 22nd. And it's all because why? We haven't invested in it. And if you think the free market's going to do it, maybe you should be taking the ALS challenge, a little bucket of water on your head, or just a block of ice, because it ain't going to happen. It's got to be us. It's got to be you. It's got to be me. It's got to be we the people. So today, like I said, there was the big rally. When we come back, I'm going to talk with Kia Hinton. She was one of the good folks who came out and spoke at the rally about what she wants to see in the next budget and the ideas that she has. And I'm looking forward to that. Going to take a quick break right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Not right wing, just right. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1972, marking the day of the Buffalo Creek flood in West Virginia. The Pittston Coal Company's waste impoundment dam failed during heavy rain, causing more than 130 million gallons of water and coal waste to flood the valley below. Shirley Markham of Lundale described what happened. The only warning we had was just a woman neighbor who spotted it and pulled in front of our house and hollered, "Run! The dam has broken!" The flood killed 125 people, including whole families. 7 bodies, 6 of them children, were never found. The flood caused some $50 million in damage, and 4,000 residents lost their homes. Government officials suggested building 750 units of public housing for those affected. Only 17 homes and 90 apartments were ever built. The Pittston Coal Company declared the disaster an act of God. 3 separate investigating commissions disagreed and found the coal company responsible. They found that the Pittston Coal Company had disregarded safety practices. Even though the company was to blame for the disaster, they never faced criminal charges, and no one served a day behind bars for what the Citizens Commission concluded was murdering of at least 124 men, women, and children. The company did eventually settle its lawsuits. After legal fees, each family impacted by the flood received a meager $13,000. One positive result of the disaster was that West Virginia implemented stricter regulations and inspections of coal dams in the state. This song, Black Water, commemorates the Buffalo Creek flood of 1972.
Coal company say God is to blame. They built the dam, but he brought the rain. Truth was known throughout the land. Never to trust a company name.
This is the Media Matters Minute. I'm Coleman Lowndes. Some of President Obama's more lighthearted media appearances have triggered humorless responses from his conservative critics. For example, after President Obama appeared in a BuzzFeed video promoting the deadline to sign up for health coverage through the Affordable Care Act, Fox News host Greta Van Susteren announced,
I yearn for my president looking presidential and serious right now.
For 6 years now, Fox News talkers and guests have claimed Obama has diminished the office of the presidency. When Obama went on the comedy show Between Two Ferns to promote healthcare.gov last year, Fox and Friends host Brian Kilmeade had this to say.
It is so inappropriate for the President of the United States to be sitting down with an interview that's a mock-up.
And in 2012, when President Obama appeared on NBC's Late Night with Jimmy Fallon, then Fox and Friends co-host Gretchen Carlson responded,
I think it's nutso.
But
I
he
just
is-
think it lowers the status of the office.
Sorry, Fox News, but you know what does diminish the office of the presidency? Incessantly claiming the occupant isn't worthy of respect. For more on this and other stories, please visit MediaMatters.org.
Chances are, when you took a shower this morning, an AFSCME member made sure that water was clean. When you drove to work, an AFSCME member maintained the road. When you rode an elevator, an AFSCME member inspected it. I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. AFSCME members enforce regulations, keep prisoners behind bars, take care of patients, protect the environment, and more. The work isn't glamorous, the salaries aren't high, but AFSCME members serve the public in every aspect of our daily lives. Chances are, you'll never see that AFSCME member working in a sewage plant, diving underwater to repair a bridge, or answering a 911 call. But aren't you glad they do? For more information, Visit AFSME13.org.
We are AFSME.
Where family values are more than slogans. The Rick Smith Show.
Times like these you learn to live again. It's times like these you give again. It's times like these you learn to love again.
So this morning, people from across the Commonwealth gathered in the Capitol Rotunda there in Harrisburg to advocate for a people's budget. Yes, a people's budget. How dare they? Right? Isn't that what the Republicans would say? Well, anyway, the People's Lobby came and, the idea, send a message to our legislators that we want education, we want investment in roads and bridges and infrastructure and all of that stuff. And from what the reports that I've heard, it was a fantastic turnout. A couple of hundred folks, about 400 or 500 folks showed up, which is why I've asked Kia Hinton, a Philadelphia parent, and the chair of Action United, who was at the Capitol today. Kia, thanks for taking time for us.
Sure, not a problem.
So, I guess really a very good turnout for the People's Lobby to lobby on behalf of a decent budget, huh?
Yeah, there's a lot of people and, a lot of smart people, and we came with a lot of energy. And, we really presented our side of why we need a people's budget.
And this is a different position, I think, for most people who come to the Capitol and lobby on budget issues, because the last 4 years have just been horrible. It's been one of these things of, let's not start advocating for things that are positive and good. It's let's try and hold off some of the ugliness and some of the horrible things that Corbett was doing. So I got to imagine that was a pretty big shift in thought coming into the Capitol today, huh?
Yeah, so like for the last 3 years, we've been a part of that fight, coming up to the Capitol and just really, like you said, just trying to stave off some of the things that we felt were destructive to our families and our communities.
So walk me through some of the people's budget. What are the people looking for?
So we're looking for a budget that's helpful for the everyday common man. Not rich people, not the 1%, but, regular folk, parents, students, healthcare workers, retirees, those type of people.
So maybe fully funding education and maybe coming up with a funding formula that's fair across the border. Would that be one of the things on the people's budget?
Absolutely. We're Pennsylvania is like one of 2 states left in the country that doesn't have a fair funding formula. And it's just, it doesn't make sense. And over in Philly, we're really feeling the effects of not having a funding formula. And that was one of the reasons that myself and our community group Action United came to the Capitol today.
As a parent, I've got to imagine that you've got to be thrilled that Governor Corbett is gone, and maybe breathing a sigh of relief that Governor Wolf is the one writing the budget for right now, and with the proposal coming up that we're not going to see another 20-30% cut to education and another assault. Look, $1 billion a year Corbett took from education during his tenure. Each and every year, $1 billion was gone. That's not a good place to be.
That's not a good place at all, right? I think it was 2 years ago. We had massive layoffs. We saw a lot of our teachers get laid off, support staff. We lost counselors and nurses, and we even saw 2 young people lose their life at school. And we felt like that could have been avoided had we had a nurse at our school. And so we're just saying, other places, like Lower Marion and Bucks County, they don't have to experience, not having a nurse, not having the supplies that they need so that their kids, can get an education. And, we feel like, why are our children any different? They really aren't. They deserve the opportunity to a good education as well.
Yeah, not just they deserve it. It's a constitutional right. It's in our Constitution that every child gets a thorough and efficient education. And I don't know how you can look at our system and make a cogent argument that the system is set up to deliver that efficient education.
Absolutely. I mean, even this year alone, I have a 10th grader who this year she had geometry, and there weren't enough teachers. And it was just until January that they were able to secure them a geometry teacher. And that's just ridiculous. You know, our kids shouldn't have to be pushed into classes of 40 and 50 students because we don't have enough teachers. It's just, it doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And you don't want somebody like me who, you know, I passed geometry like 100 years ago. You don't want me teaching it. You want somebody who actually knows what they're doing to teach the class, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if we're attacking teachers and not giving them a fair salary and benefits, you know, we should even attract quality and qualified teachers. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. And we're talking about, you know, we're moving into the tech age. We're in the tech age, and you know, we want to have people who can fill the jobs that are going to be necessary in the future. And so it makes sense for our economy. It makes sense for our nation. You know, it's just common sense.
So let me ask you, well, I guess we lost her. There went that. I was going to ask her, you know, what kind of response, you know, she got from the legislators and the folks who were out, you know, knocking on doors. Because you got to imagine that, you know, the 500 people who were there, what they did is they went and knocked on legislators' doors. And I think this is the kind of stuff that has to happen. And Kia, I know we got, you know, when you're on the turnpike, good luck. Again, you know, that wonderful free market delivering that public good to us. And this might even be a good point for me to spout off on this one. Imagine if you live somewhere along the turnpike and the Republicans get, and of course, you know, Verizon, the big corporation, they get what they want, which is to walk away from landline telephones. Imagine if you live somewhere along the turnpike and maybe your cell phone works, maybe it doesn't, but Verizon's walked away from landline service. Think about that for a second. But the turnpike's horrible because I drive it all the time, and it's forever dropping calls, and the service is horrible and spotty. You know, the wonders of the free market. You know how wonderful capitalism is at delivering those really good results. Yeah, unless you live in an area somewhere like the turnpike. But you know, when you go out there and you're knocking on these legislators' doors, they need to hear that there are people who care about education and infrastructure and all of these other things and a social safety net that nobody falls through. Because I think you get into that Capitol, you get into your little isolated chambers, and you go, oh, we're big shots. This is where people need to get involved and be knocking these folks down a step or two. I like two. Because look, you know, at the end of the day, they get themselves into this world where, you know, they're the important ones. And the rest of us, well, you know, so much not. So I think it's a great thing that that Kia and the rest of the folks from across the state came out and said, look, you know, we want to have a fair budget. And this, you know, as I was saying with her, you know, the amazing thing is the feeling that, you know, there's somebody in the governor's mansion, there's somebody who's sitting behind that desk who's listening, who's saying, look, you know, these things are important. Education's important. These things are important. Taking care of our kids, taking care of our seniors, taking care of workers. These things are important. And they're worth pursuing in the budget, which is why, you know, looking at next Tuesday, I believe it is. It's the 3rd, March 3rd. Looking at March 3rd, I'm going, you know, I'm looking for the priorities. I'm looking for the laundry list of heartfelt priorities. And, you know, look, that's what budgets are. Budgets are your religion, if you will. It's what you believe. It's who you are. We saw where the Republicans stood on their belief structure. And we're seeing what their priorities are right now. Their priorities are about going after their political enemies. That's really what this first month and a half has been about. Because I haven't seen really anything positive coming out of the Republican chambers. I just haven't. The leadership has shown me that they are hell-bent on their ideological special interests. Privatization, and hey, going after stealing pensions, going after people on the job. That's the priority. And the frustration for me is look, there's still people who vote for these folks because they put them in the majority and they have overwhelming power. And it's going to be up to us to pay attention to what they're doing, because the reason they're doing this now is they don't stand for re-election for another year and a half. They know they're okay to do this shenanigans now because most of us aren't really paying attention. Well, this is where we've got to make things a little different. And we've got to start paying attention. Let's take a quick break. And Kia, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Right back after this.
We gotta get organized. We gotta do it today. No more madness, confusion. No more misery. We gotta get organized.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Well, let's set our sights higher than a single oil pipeline.
Vetoed. Obama nixes the Keystone XL pipeline.
These are scientists that cannot be challenged.
Exposed. Prominent climate denier scientist funded by fossil fuel industry.
9 criminal counts.
Busted. Duke Energy clipped by the feds. Plus,
So I was flabbergasted.
sorry deniers, climate change is not caused by the sun.
Also celebrated our 6th anniversary. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
I don't expect to have to veto it because I expect they're going to have enough sense over on Capitol Hill to do the people's business.
Wrong again, Mr. President. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, it is our 6th anniversary of the Green News Report.
I know.
Congratulations to you.
And you.
And I want to thank all of our listeners and affiliate partners. Please stop on by greennews.bradblog.com and help us celebrate, or just stop by bradblog.com/donate to help us stay on the air. We really rely on you, and I'm not kidding. We don't have the Koch brothers, the American Petroleum Institute, the Southern Company, and all of these other fossil fuel companies who have been found to have paid off a phony baloney scientist that Wingnuts have been relying on for years, but I don't want to give away your story. So, Desi, what do you have for us today?
Well, we will get to that in a moment. But first, President Obama has vetoed a bill to fast-track the controversial Keystone XL pipeline. He did not veto it on the merits, but because he says it usurps executive branch authority. In vetoing it, he said, quote, "It attempts to circumvent long-standing proven processes for determining national interest."
They do have the ability to override the veto with a 2/3 vote.
That's not very likely.
Well, that was easy.
Moving on, the climate change denial industry's favorite climate denier scientist is funded by fossil fuels.
What?
The New York Times reports that climate researcher Willie Soon, who has gained quite a bit of fame for denying the role of humans in driving climate change, has failed to disclose that he received more than $1 million from the fossil fuel industry and the Koch brothers front groups. In emails, Dr. Soon himself described his studies and his appearances before Congress to deny climate change as, quote, deliverables in exchange for fossil fuel funding.
So he was getting hundreds of thousands of dollars from the American Petroleum Institute, from ExxonMobil, from Koch brothers, from Southern Company, these huge energy interests, which he says was no secret, except for the fact that he failed to mention those conflicts of interest when he published his phony so-called scientific papers.
Yes, it's a huge violation of academic ethics, and he is now under investigation by Harvard University and the Smithsonian Institution, where he works, and by the journals that published his work.
Denier Gate.
Dr. Soon used fossil fuel funding to falsely claim that global warming is not caused by humans, but by the sun's variability. That has been repeatedly ruled out by actual actual climate scientists, like the University of California, Berkeley physicist and former skeptic, Dr. Richard Muller.
Who, by the way, was also funded by the Koch brothers before he discovered,
hey, dummy, try carbon dioxide. Smack on. So I was flabbergasted. Not only was global warming real and roughly consistent with what the previous groups had said, but the match to carbon dioxide and the fact that solar variability was not responsible. They want us to rule out the primary alternative theory.
So that was the Koch-funded scientist, Dr. Richard Muller, debunking the theory that Dr. Soon was peddling, that Senator James Inhofe was pointing to.
Yes.
I'll bet it doesn't even show up for a second on Fox News.
Finally, accountability is also visiting coal giant Duke Energy. The federal government has charged Duke Energy with 9 criminal violations of clean water laws, including for a massive coal ash spill at a Duke Energy coal facility last year that contaminated 70 miles of the Dan River in Virginia. The investigation of that spill led to the discovery that Duke Energy has been illegally dumping contaminated coal wastewater into North Carolina rivers for the last 5 years. Duke Energy has announced it has agreed to pay $100 million in fines and restitution to settle the charges.
And yet no one is going to jail.
Yep.
All of these stories coming to a head today, we have been telling you about for years.
Even if the mainstream corporate media hasn't.
Please consider stopping by to help us celebrate our 6th anniversary of the Green News Report at greennews.bradblog.com, or, as I say, bradblog.com/donate. We really need your help. Thanks, guys. We're going to celebrate all week. Find us and like us on the Facebook and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your 6th anniversary Green News Report.
I'm gonna soak up the sun. I got my 45 on, so I can rock on.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
To this battle, take my Union gun. Gonna end this world of slavery, for this war is one you're bound to lose. Are you fascists are bound to lose?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-888-520-RICK, 1-888-520-7425. Our quote of the day comes from Josh Bivens over at the Economic Policy Institute. He said, let's be clear. Let's be clear about this. Raising wages should be the norm in the American economy and should happen all the time without fanfare. What's he talking about? He's talking about Walmart. Walmart getting all these pats on the back and accolades. Oh, aren't they such a good company? No. No. And then, I think it was TJ Maxx and somebody else piled on and said, yeah, us too. Although Target has not. So bad Target. But, you look at this and Bivens is right. Getting raises, a rising standard of living, more reward for the work that you do should be the norm, not the moment where we all celebrate, hey, oh my goodness, they're doing the right thing. And I guess the question then becomes, have we been used to them doing the wrong thing for so long that now that you go, oh, wow, yay. And my other question is, will this be another water moment? If you remember that during the hurricane down in New Orleans, Walmart sent, a bunch of truckloads of water down into New Orleans. And the numbers were like $5 or $6 million worth of water this cost. And as the story, as I remember it, they spent all this and they had this huge convoy down. And of course, they didn't let it go to waste. They used it as a good photo op. But they spent like $18 million promoting the fact that they had sent this small amount of water down and all of these goods and stuff. that, of course, they wrote off, and we eventually paid for. But still, they were being the good benevolent company, or so they promoted to us, and we kind of bought it. And I'm wondering if we're going to see some of this, because we're the ones who end up forking over a lot of this because they just write it off. These are nice write-offs. It's take away from their profits for good PR. And look, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but at the end of the day, what is simple stuff. But here's the thing, in looking at a fair budget, going back to the conversation with Kia Hinton, I've got an idea. I've got an idea of where, because we've got a huge budget hole. Corbett took office and we had a budget hole, and he only made it worse. In fact, he made everything worse. The priorities that the Republicans, this is where I cannot believe that anyone would have voted for a Republican in this last election. It just blows my mind. All of their policies, all of the things that they said weren't. All of this ideological, if we give it to all the rich people, we'll all be better off. It hasn't worked. It hasn't worked. I'm sorry. And I know, Rick, but they give it to upper, rich people and lower rich people too. I think a good place to start would be to dump the standardized tests. Get rid of these idiotic data collecting for-profit standardized tests. That would be a good start. And today over at Penn Live, they had a number of articles, and I'm hoping that since a fairly mainstream media outlet has finally come around to picking it up, that it would be worth people paying attention to. Because I've been saying this for about 4 years now in this program, that we opted our kids out, and we'll continue to because I don't see the value in them. And I remember when I first started. The first time I stepped forward, I said, no, my daughter's not taking this. The first response I got is, well, she would pass the test, and we really need people who could pass the test so that we don't lose money. And, for a moment, I actually felt bad because, am I really harming my local school district by taking my kid out of it? Because she will pass. She's a bright kid. All the kids are. They will pass the standardized test. And, I kind of felt bad for a moment. And then I realized, well, look, I'm not about propping the test up. To me, it's about getting rid of it and changing education back to the way it was, to where we're teaching critical thinking citizens instead of just little robotic test takers. To me, that's the goal. We want critical thinkers. We want citizens. We want people who are problem solvers. We want, we want these. We want something different than just someone who, there's the bubble, and I'm outside the bubble. So there are a number of articles talking about folks who in the area are doing some great things. And look, there are people all over the country doing some really great things. And one of the articles focused on two women from Lancaster. One is an assistant professor over at Millersville, and they've started the Lancaster County opt-out. And, as this woman goes through it, and as I'm reading the article, I'm going, but this is exactly what I've been saying for the last 4 years. Thank goodness someone's been listening. Not that I know that they have, but, the message is getting out that, these tests aren't what they were sold to us as. They aren't in any way, shape, or form diagnostic. And as my wife reminded me this morning, because understand, no longer my original fear, no longer is that the case. No longer is it the case that if your kids don't take the test and a number of kids don't and they fail, that the school will be labeled a failure. Most districts have been given waivers from No Child Left Behind and the whole AYP thing, because this 2014, it was supposed to be 100% passage. Which, you go, cat's out of the bag here. Because you can give 100 people. What's 3 times 6? And not everyone is going to, not 100% of them are not going to come up with 18. Some of them will come up with 9. And you know that. And to have a test that says 100% have to pass this test or meet this standard, or we start doing punishment things that ultimately results in taking money away from you and closing down your school, to me kind of goes, that's the point, right, guys? The point is to privatize the system, especially when you don't have charter schools who have to take these damn tests. So my thought is look, here's the idea. Do away with these idiotic testing. Do away with the for-profit testing. Sorry, Wall Street. Sorry, Rupert Murdoch. Sorry, Jeb Bush. Sorry, all of you very well-to-do, loaded people. Find another profit stream. Our kids are off limits. And go back to teachers who make up their own damn tests. Or, like they used to do when I was a kid, some of them would be in the back of the textbook. At the end of every chapter, there was a chapter test. Those are tests that I'm okay with because, look, tests aren't bad. You're tested every day. I'm tested every day on this program. Every day I've got a final exam at 3:00. Every day I've got to sit down and do 3 hours of radio. Same thing with you. Every day you got to punch the clock. You're tested every day, day in, day out. So in my view, tests are not bad. My question is these tests, imagine if you had to take a test every day that if you didn't get 100% on, eventually we would defund your job and you'd be unemployed. Would you be happy with that? And then everything in your life was then focused on how to just take that test. You'd get pretty damn bored of that and really, really quick, wouldn't you? Of course you would. And the other part of this is who's benefiting. It's not my kids. So I'm hoping that, I'm hoping that all of this news around this and all of the talk around the opt-out starts getting parents to wake up. Because look, again, back to that frame of we the people. This is our education system. These are our children's future. We should have a say in it, which again is why I'm against the whole privatization. You look down at the New York City School District where they want to privatize the whole thing and take out parental involvement, take out parental control, take out community control. There's a problem there. So I'm hoping, and this is going to take a lot of work because, look, folks are busy. Because in this state, the only way that you can possibly opt out of these, and which I think is idiotic, is for a religious reason. Now, if I'm ever quizzed on it, as I understand, they're never going to ask you what your religious reason is. But as I've always said, every faith, every religion, every moment of spirituality has an ethic of reciprocity. The whole idea of do unto others, that seems fairly universal. And also this idea that you don't harm the least of us. Again, kind of the same idea. Because you then look at our education system and how dysfunctional, especially here in Pennsylvania, and how uneven the funding is. You then have a situation where you're really harming the poor and downtrodden. And these tests disproportionately affect them and destroy not only their schools and their the structures around them, but their self-esteem. And I know. Well, I don't care if they got to pass. No, you need to have the ability to think that you can do this stuff before you're shoved into this. And this is what's frustrating as hell to me. And I've told this story before. My son, who's particularly bright, and I'm not just saying that because he's my son. He is. He's a smart kid. He got like a 0 on this test, and he was like, "I don't know why I got a 0 on it, Dad. I just, And the teacher says, well, he hasn't been exposed to any of this stuff. I go, well, why would you give him a test of things that he's never been exposed to? Oh, it's so that when he takes it after we've exposed it to him, we then can compare. Am I the only one who sees the idiocy in that logic? I mean, think about it. We're going to test you on brain surgery. You go do brain surgery today. Well, sorry, the guy died. So now we're going to teach you how to do brain surgery. It's nuts. This whole concept, this whole testing regime is dumb. Now, that's not to say that I'm not in favor of testing. I am. I'm a big fan of, daily, weekly, all little quizzes, little pop quizzes, little tests that are graded immediately and instant feedback. Big fan, especially in this day of instant everything. There's no reason that a test, think about this for a second, a high stakes standardized test that every kid has to pass in order to move along, but you have to wait 6, 7 months, 8 months to get the results. You tell me, in this day of instant everything, where you're filling in the damn little bubble, why does it take 8 months to get the results back? Because it's really not about education. It's about profit. It's about how much money we can put into the pockets of the very few. That simple. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Now who'd have thought that after all, something as simple as rock and roll would save us all? Now who'd have thought that after all, it was rock and roll?
Not right wing, just right. The Rick Smith Show.
From Lisbon, Portugal, this is your World in Two. I'm your host, Luke Vargas, with the Talk Radio News Service. There's been a lot of talk lately about the strategic risks caused by U.S. military officials releasing details on an upcoming coalition attack on Mosul, the Iraqi city controlled by the Islamic State. But that decision does not appear to be weakening the commitment of some other coalition countries. Australia and Canada are implementing tough anti-terror laws, while France has begun to confiscate the passports of those suspected of traveling to Syria. Denmark and the UK are preparing to do the same. And earlier this week, the government of New Zealand announced it would send more than 100 defense forces to Iraq to help train the Iraqi army. But what might seem like a politically safe decision has caused quite a lot of debate. Prime Minister John Key delivered a blistering speech yesterday in Parliament calling out members of the opposition Labour Party for breaking rank with their ideological peers around the world and attempting to block the deployment on political grounds.
Labour in New Zealand, when it comes to sending New Zealand forces for training, says no. They say no. But the interesting thing is the Labour opposition in the UK, they say yes. The Labour opposition in Australia, they say yes.
Detractors of the deployment suggest the government is ill-prepared to respond to several worst-case scenarios, like a potential kidnapping of a Kiwi soldier. But Key was adamant that decision merely came down to having guts.
When people are out there being beheaded, I'm sorry, but this is the time to stand up and be counted. Get some guts and join the right side.
For more global news headlines, visit talkradionews.com.
Whenever a corporation issues a statement declaring that it is committed to, quote, treating consumers fairly and with respect, chances are it's not. After all, if the outfit was actually doing it, there would be no need for a statement. Indeed, this particular claim came from Encore Capital, one of our country's largest buyers of bad consumer debt. And it definitely has not been playing nice with the people it browbeats to collect overdue credit card bills, car loans, etc. New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman found that Encore, based in San Diego, filed nearly 240,000 lawsuits against debtors in a recent 4-year period, using our courts as its private collection arm. Problem is, Encore's bulk filing of lawsuits are rife with errors, out-of-date payment data, fabricated credit card statements, etc. Tons of them are missing original loan documents, payment histories, and other proof of debt. Debt predators, however, scoot around this lack of facts by simply having their employees sign affidavits asserting that the level of money owed is accurate. Judges, overwhelmed by the unending flood of lawsuits filed by Encore et al., have accepted those affidavits as true, thus ruling in favor of the corporations. But Schneiderman found that, surprise, affidavits were simply being rubber-stamped by company employees who didn't have time to check for accuracy. An employee of one large debt buyer testified that he was having to sign about 2,000 affidavits a day. This is Jim Hightower saying, this is no minor scam. 1 in 7 adults in the U.S. is under pursuit by debt collectors. It's hard enough for struggling families to claw their way out from under the economic crash without having lying, cheating, predator corporations twist the court system to pick their pockets and shut off their hope of recovery.
Hightower's commentary is brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown. From Wall Street to Washington, this monthly newsletter reveals who's doing what to whom and why. Check it out, hightowerlowdown.org.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, rick at thericksmithshow.com. So let the waste, fraud, and abuse continue. Our good friends, the Republicans in the General Assembly, again, and no, I shouldn't even give it, I shouldn't even be that broad. The leadership, Mike Turzai, the speaker, the leadership of the Republican Party, and a good number of the marching soldiers, they're hell-bent on this ideological push to privatize the wine and spirit shops that I don't know, but a handful of people who have contacted me and said they think this is a good idea. The vast majority of people that I talk to say this is a horrible, abysmal, stupid, business-wise, ignorant way to go. But that never stopped the Republicans from privatizing anything, and some Democrats. But fortunately, in this instance, none of the Democrats in the General Assembly right now are siding with the privatization scheme because, look, at the end of the day, we know this is going to be another one of those moments that we look back on and go, gee whiz, I wish we'd have kept it, because it's out of the bag. The genie's out of the bottle. We now have all these societal problems. We now have all of these well, I mean, all of the things that I grew up with. Liquor availability all over the place. There was beer everywhere. I could get beer anytime I wanted. Wine, 42 proof and below liquor and anywhere, because they sold it in the convenience stores. In fact, the one by my house, and I had friends who did this. They actually had it on the end cap right near the door, and I had friends who just reach in, grab a bottle, and walk away. And nobody ever saw them. Do you want that kind of accessibility for teenagers? And the answer is absolutely not. Nothing good comes of that. And that's one of the things about Pennsylvania that I actually like, is that you don't see the same problems that I saw growing up, going through high school, and that still exist in the high school that I went to. But that doesn't stop our socially conservative Republican friends who just see this as an ideological victory, not something that is actually going to help the Commonwealth. Because, the money, it ain't happening. I'm sorry. It just isn't. We're not getting this huge windfall of cash that's going to fill the coffers. It ain't happening. And, the insane way of which they've rolled out how they're going to do this. Okay, the people at beer distributorships first. Now you're going to be the first to get these licenses if you'll pay for them. What happened to the auction process? What happened to them? These have real value. We're going to get the highest. I guess not. I guess that's not the goal, right? And that, to me, that really sends a very clear message. It's not really about the money we're going to get out of it. It's ideology, pure and simple. It's pure and simple. How much money can they put into the pockets of the privateers? And look, your local newspaper, their editorial board's certainly not going to come out against it. Why? Huge ad revenues. The newspaper, radio, TV, those people are going, yes, privatize. So that ad revenue comes flowing in. I mean, you can't even believe what you're being told from your media. And I'm telling you right now, there's nothing good that comes out of this. We are never going to get the money back into the coffers without a whole ton of externalities and a whole ton of costs that are beyond our control. In the end, no matter what happens, and the Tea Party think tank can go, oh no, we'll bring more money in. They can lie to you all they want. But they know, like other places, it ain't going to happen. And we will have lost this asset for good, because once you do it, you can't undo it. And that's my problem with this. There are some people, well, let's try. No, you can't just try, because there's no way, there's no clawback. There's no way of getting the genie back into the bottle. There's nothing you can put in the bottom where the genie goes, oh, let me get back in. Ain't happening. Simple stuff. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
The Rick Smith Show, changing America for the better.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. The Wisconsin State Senate Wednesday night passed the controversial anti-union right-to-work bill on a vote of 17 to 15. Here's what it sounded like in the Senate gallery when that bill passed.
Senator from the 13th.
Immediately message to the Assembly.
The senator asked unanimous consent that the bill be immediately messaged to the Senate. Assembly. Senator from the 13th.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that we adjourn according to skeleton session tomorrow.
President asks unanimous consent. We adjourn till skeletal session tomorrow. Without objection, we're adjourned.
You're either with the workers or with the
Another frigid, snowy winter's day, another Wisconsin labor rally at the state capitol protesting the so-called right-to-work bill. The Republicans are fast-tracking through the state legislature. Wisconsin AFL-CIO President Phil Neuenfeld.
What are we doing here? Well, we're here to fight for a better and brighter Wisconsin. A Wisconsin where all workers have the freedom to a family-supporting job with decent wages and benefits. A Wisconsin where all workers have the right to form a union. We are standing up for democracy and the middle class. Let's keep up the fight. Let's keep the solidarity alive. Together, workers indivisible. Solidarity, unity from one and all.
Labor is rallying again at Wisconsin's capital this Saturday. Bill Carroll is a Teamster with Local 344.
We are here to protest this right-to-work legislation that's being jammed down the throats of working people in this state. The name right-to-work is an illusion, and it's meant to fool and deceive people. It has nothing to do with the right to work. It has everything to do with eroding workers' voice on the job, unions, and organized labor's influence.
Thousands of United Teachers of Los Angeles members are rallying today to demand smaller class sizes, fully staffed schools, clean and safe schools, and fair compensation for teachers. The LA Teachers Union says labor talks with the district are at an impasse, and they say they're joined in the fight for quality public education by students, parents, and community groups, as well as other teachers' unions in California and beyond. This report made possible in part through underwriting from the Bank of Labor. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Back to the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
When those Walmart guys hear the word unionize, they go completely insane. They'll find out who, and boy, if it's you, you're in for a world of pain. Yeah, I got friends with low wages. They work for Walmart in outrageously bad conditions. Cause the union's missing.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Although Walmart's getting some good press here. They finally have taken enough of a beating that they're considering they're going to raise their minimum wage, which I guess good for them and a couple other people, not Target. have come along, and I still agree with Josh Bivens, the research director over at the Economic Policy Institute, where he said, look, wage increases should be the norm in the American economy, not something that we have to have big fanfare over and news headlines. A rising standard of living should be something that we should all be aspiring for, and we should have an economy that does. And I find it very interesting that today the Republican-led House Education and Workplace Committee held a hearing against the president's executive order. You may remember we talked about this when the president did it. Said, federal contracts are going to raise the minimum wage up so that when we use federal dollars, people do a little bit better. Well, the House Republicans held and I'm thinking they lost their messaging arm, the blacklisting executive order, rewriting federal labor policy through executive fiat. You can't put that on a bumper sticker. I think they're losing their edge. But here to talk a little bit about it, I've asked Paco Fabian. He's a spokesperson for Good Jobs Nation, goodjobsnation.org, the website. Paco, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks, Rick, for having me on the show. Pleasure to be here.
So I look at this hearing, and outside of the bizarre name, just bad idea, bad messaging, and in my view, just bad.
No, it's terrible. I mean, how can the GOP position itself now in a moment where, even Jeb Bush and others are using talking points that folks on my side of the political spectrum have been using for a long time, talking about the need to fix economic inequality and raise wages and working standards for working folks. How can they, with credibility, say that they're now against wage theft by putting on this sham of a hearing on Capitol Hill? It's pretty unbelievable. Right. But the truth is, we packed the room with workers. The panel was, mostly lawyers from the Chamber of Commerce and other industry associations. But to their credit, the Democratic members of that committee used worker stories to try and push for the real need for this executive order to happen.
So let me get this straight. Much like the hearing on abortion rights and contraception that had no women on it, you're telling me there were no workers who were involved in this?
That's right. No workers were called to testify, even though the Good Jobs Nation campaign has actually filed 2 wage theft complaints for workers at the Union Station here in Washington, D.C., which is a federal building, as well as ironically named the Ronald Reagan building here in Washington, D.C., which is the largest civilian federal building in the country, the largest being the Pentagon, which is not civilian.
Well, I mean, if it's the Ronald Reagan building, you're expecting wage theft. I mean, come on.
Right. But look, I mean, the fact is that what this executive order does, it's called the Fair and Safe Workplaces Executive Order. What it does is it prevents it basically establishes the principle that the federal government shouldn't be doing business with companies that are breaking the law. And anybody that thinks that taxpayer money should be used to fund companies that are abusing workers or breaking the law in any other way, we should highlight that and really show the true colors of the folks that are pushing against this executive order.
Well, what do you say to the folks who, that's anti-capitalism, what you're saying? The free market should dictate, and if the cheaters win, so be it.
Well, look, I think it's Chris Rock that said, right, the reason I'm paying you the minimum wage is because I have to. If I could, I would pay you less, right? And what's happening in these buildings is workers are earning as little as $5.83 an hour, and their job is being funded by the federal government. The federal government does contracts for food service, for janitorial service, for other things. These companies are reaping millions of dollars in taxpayer money. But the reason they're reaping those millions is because they're doing it on the backs of workers, and they're not paying them the wages they're supposed to be paying them. In some cases, they're retaliating against them for speaking up. In some cases, they're doing check splitting, which is a worker works at only one of the outlets, but the company owns several outlets, and so she gets checks from several different outlets. So it never adds up to more than 40 hours a week per check, even though this worker is working 60 or 70 hours a week. Yeah. So she's getting no overtime premium, and that's unfair. In this country, I think everybody understands that a hard day's work deserves a fair wage, and that's not happening even in federal buildings.
And that's sad because at the end of the day, and I guess this is where I believe if we're using federal money, it should be to raise conditions. I know my grandparents' generation believed that if we were doing things with taxpayer dollars, that it should be making conditions better, not worse, which is why we've seen things like prevailing wage laws on federal contracts and on state projects, because we understand that we don't want competition based on cutthroat capitalism and who's willing to work for less and worse conditions. We want the best work done by the best people with the best quality. That's where we should be competing.
That's right. And look, you mentioned, some state and local governments who are doing just that, right? They're using the power of procurement. That is, the purchasing that they do in the private sector to raise standards. You mentioned prevailing wage. Recently in Los Angeles, there was an executive order done by the mayor establishing basically a labor peace agreement at the airport at LAX,
right,
which says if you want to do business in this airport, it's in our interest that these workers are happy. Why? Because, people want to be able to travel. You could do the same thing at the federal level, saying, look, it's in our interest as taxpayers and it's in our interest to show the good side of the federal government. And so we should allow workers to earn decent wages, to receive benefits, to get things like paid sick days, as well as if they choose, join unions, because we know, and Rick, that that's really what gets people a foot into the middle class.
Exactly. Some of my building trades friends tell me, we should have project labor agreements everywhere. Because at the end of and look, our Republican friends fight vehemently about having just a floor under people's feet, and I have no idea why. That's one of the things that gets me, because, if people have a good firm grip on the middle class, that benefits everybody. By everyone having a decent wage with decent working conditions, everyone does better. But I like my building trade friends' idea of, every one of these, the airport, the ports, wherever, federal contracts, you should have kind of like a project labor agreement where the government says, this is it. These are the standards. These are our rules. You play by them or you go somewhere else.
That's right. What the workers at the Good Jobs Nation campaign are pushing the president to do, they were successful in getting a 10-10 minimum wage on federal contracts, which is, not the end-all be-all, but it's certainly an improvement from, $5.83 and what some other workers were earning illegally. They also pushed the president to do this executive order on fair and safe workplaces. But what the workers are really pushing for, and this is something that the president has talked about, the president has said, he wants the federal government to be a model employer. Well, if the government is going to be a model employer, then we should only do business with companies that are model employers too. Currently, the way the system is set up, we end up doing with business as taxpayers with companies that are more like Walmart, when we should be doing business with companies that are more like Costco. And that's what the workers are really pushing. And of course, they want this president to do it. But if he's not able to in the next couple of years, then we're going to try and hold all the presidential candidates going into the next cycle accountable and making sure that they use taxpayer dollars to create good jobs and not to keep workers in poverty.
Right. And there's an opportunity in this because, I hear a lot of the Republican candidates talking about, inequality. I don't like their answers for inequality, but the fact that they're starting to wake up and realize that there is a problem in this country and that people are starting to organize around it might give people the opportunity to say, the Republicans, if you want to be a party in the 21st century, you need to at least come along on some of these ideas, inequality being part of that, wage theft, all of these things being part of it. And look, I'm all in favor of pushing all of these politicians, as past generations have done well, into doing what's right.
That's right, and look, I think we're in a particular moment now where that's certainly happening. I think the reason the president did the 10-10 executive order wasn't just because there were federal contractors pushing. You at the same time you had the Walmart workers going on strike, and you had fast food workers going on strike. You had port truck drivers going on strike, and I think this movement is really growing. We're seeing more and more workers that currently, by the way, are not part of any sort of union, standing up and demanding rights and the ability to bargain collectively with our employers. I think, if we really want to have a real recovery in the middle class in this country, that needs to happen because, Rick, as the middle class didn't just happen. It was built, and it was built in large part by workers being able to join unions and bargain with their employers for better wages and working conditions. And that's what we need to get back to if we want to have the broadest middle class that the world has ever seen.
Yeah, and the thing is the corporatists, they understand that organizing is going on, which is why the last couple of years, and I've been saying this for years now, which is why we're seeing all of these assaults for right to work, paycheck deception, all of this stuff that the corporatists are pushing their Republican Party to pushing on us. They understand that as the economy gets better, those of us who've been tightening our belts are going to pick up our head and go, hey, we want some of the rewards of the work we've been doing throughout this entire downturn. We want to be able to have something a little bit better, and they're going to take it away from us.
That's right. And look, I mean, if you look at productivity over the last 10 years, productivity's been doing nothing but going up, right? That means, the goods and services that our workers are producing are increasing in ways that, we haven't seen before, almost at record levels. Meanwhile, wages are at the same level that they were in 1970 or lower, right? So something's not right there, and workers need to start sharing in the productivity that they're creating, and frankly, the 1% are getting too much, right?
Exactly.
And we need to do something about that.
No, I talk about myself. Look, back in the late 80s, I started working in college at a trucking company, throwing boxes on a shipping dock, making $15 an hour with a healthcare credit, with a pension credit, part-time. That exact job I did, a little over a quarter of a century ago. Wow, I'm feeling old. Actually is making about $12 an hour today. No economic trickery, no gamesmanship by the economist class, with no health care and no pension. And you look at this and go, that's a major drop in wealth for doing a job that, I got to be honest, should be rewarded and is valued.
That's right. And look, I mean, particularly when we're talking about, shipping and transportation, like these are jobs that are absolutely impossible to offshore, right? You can't, ship that job off to China. That's just not possible.
Although they wanted to. Look, I worked for a company who they actually wanted to try and figure out how they built loads that were completely loaded in China, that you would pick up the container at the port and deliver it in the cities without ever touching one of our docks. So they were trying. Give them credit. It failed, but they were trying.
Right. But look, I mean, somebody's got to, load the truck. Somebody's got to unload it. Right. So that's, we're not in the, robots aren't there yet, right? And they might be in the future. But look, these jobs, service jobs, right? Janitorial jobs, food service jobs, those cannot be offshored. Yep. And that's the largest growing sector of jobs in the country right now. And we have to make sure that those jobs, no one's trying to get rich off of them, but they should be able to support a family on the earnings from those jobs.
Yeah, like I say, no working person wants to make a killing. They just want to make a living. It's that simple.
That's right.
You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Paco Fabian, spokesperson for Good Jobs Nation, their website, goodjobsnation.org. We've got a link at the ricksmithshow.com. Last question I've got for you. They had this big panel of all of these federal contractors. So just how onerous is this Obama executive order on these poor folks? No second vacation home. No $1 million gold watches. What? How bad is it on them?
Well, look, I mean, I think that if you were a federal contractor that was, on the right side of the law, that meaning that you don't have any record of violations or anything else, you should be happy about this, because what it's going to do is going to knock out your competitors that are, undercutting you because they're not paying what they're supposed to be paying their workers. They're skimping on health and safety and other things. So if I was a contractor, I would be extremely happy. And if I'm an unhappy contractor, it's because I'm going to have to file more paperwork. Why? Because I've been found to be in some sort of violation of labor law. Think of it this way, right? What this executive order does is it creates a fast lane for good companies. They don't have to do the paperwork. If they've, certified that over the last 3 years they don't have any labor law violations or health and safety violations, then you get to check a box and you get your contract. Right? But if you have been found to engage in some sort of labor law violation, then guess what? There's going to be a little more scrutiny, and there should be more scrutiny because this is taxpayer money, right? And there'll be a little more scrutiny. They'll actually work with you to try and resolve the problems. and then you'll still be able to get a federal contract, right? So it puts good actors on a fast lane, and it slows down bad actors. And if they continue to violate labor law, then perhaps they'll stop getting taxpayer dollars, and we hope that that's the case.
And I think that is a great thing. And good on Obama. I'm usually very hard on him because I don't think he does enough for labor. But I think this is one of the steps that I'm 100% behind.
And so are we, and we hope, he's able to take some more, like a model employer executive order, so that we're actually using taxpayer dollars to create good jobs and not keep workers in poverty. And so the workers at Good Jobs Nation are going to continue to push for that. And, you should be on the lookout for some activity from them in mid-April.
Good. And I hope you'll come back and tell us what's going on and keep us abreast of the situation.
Happy to, Rick. Anytime.
Paco, thanks so much. Paco Fabian, spokesperson for Good Jobs Nation. Again, goodjobsnation.org, the website. We've got a link at thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Wants me to give my money to someone like you. But I do believe in what a crazy man can do.
Not right wing, just right. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1972, marking the day of the Buffalo Creek flood in West Virginia. The Pittston Coal Company's waste impoundment dam failed during heavy rain, causing more than 130 million gallons of water and coal waste to flood the valley below. Shirley Markham of Lundale described what happened. The only warning we had was just a woman neighbor who spotted it and pulled in front of our house and hollered, "Run! The dam has broken!" The flood killed 125 people, including whole families. 7 bodies, 6 of them were never found. The flood caused some $50 million in damage, and 4,000 residents lost their homes. Government officials suggested building 750 housing for those affected. Only 17 homes and 90 apartments were ever built. The Pittston Coal Company declared the disaster an act of God. 3 separate investigating commissions disagreed and found the coal company responsible. They found that the Pittston Coal Company had disregarded safety practices. Even though the company was to blame for the disaster, they never faced criminal charges, and no one served a day behind bars for what the Citizens Commission concluded was murdering of at least 124 men, women, and children. The company did eventually settle its lawsuits. After legal fees, each family impacted by the flood received a meager $13,000. One positive result of the disaster was that West Virginia implemented stricter regulations and inspections of coal dams in the state. This song, Black Water, commemorates the Buffalo Creek flood of 1972.
Coal company say God is to blame. They built the dam, but he brought the rain. Truth was known throughout the land. Never to trust a company man.
Standing up to conservatives and corporatists every weeknight. The Rick Smith Show.
So now you see the light. Hey, stand up for your right. Come on, get up, stand up. Stand up for your right.
You know, I've been talking about that for a long time, though. This idea of high road job growth, this idea of rewarding the good businesses while punishing the low road bottom feeders, if you will. And this is where I thought, and when Obama did it, I was all in favor of it. Because look, if you've been listening to this program long enough, you know I'm hard on the guy because he really came into office and I had high hopes for him. Especially on the labor front, because I think had you seen the growth of organized workers, if you would have seen the number of workers joining unions through 2010, 2011, and forward, I think the recovery would have filtered down more so into the pockets of everyday workers. When you look at, and I think Elizabeth Warren has done a great job on this, of pointing out that, back in the 70s, a good portion of the wealth that was created was not divvied up amongst the the investor class, it was reinvested in business. It was reinvested not just in machinery and plants and expanding, but also in their workers. And a big part of it, more than half, went back to investment and to workers. Now you've got 91%, she pointed out, 91% of the profits going to shareholders. And you go, well, what are they doing with it? Well, they're pocketing it. They're not reinvesting. Well, they may be reinvesting, but it's not creating jobs here. And you hear people go, well, no, we need investors. No, these are people who are gambling. They're moving money from one place to another. You know, I think a friend of mine who owns a small enterprise, and he says, I've got no money in Wall Street. I don't invest in any of that. I invest in my business. I invest in my infrastructure. I invest in adding new components to it and adding to this structure so that this is where my money's at. And I pay my workers to stay because I want loyalty and I want low turnover. And I spend a lot of time investing in these people, and we all do better together. Those are the employers that I want. I don't want the Targets and the Walmarts who are looking at people as just a number because we need a cashier until we can figure out how to automate it. I want people who are going to go, you know what, we're going to start a business that's going to do whatever it is we're going to do, but we're going to take the high road. And this is where I think government policy, again, decisions on a policy level, not the nature, not the invisible hand, not some mythical monster who decides if there's a wage fairy or not, but through smart policy, through predictable policy, you create an environment where, look, we all do better together. And this idea, you know, I love the Republicans who tell me they're against project labor agreements. And for those who don't know what a project labor agreement is, in the building trades, when they go to build a huge high rise or whatever the big project is, everybody who works on this project, they agree to a set of rules. And the workers agree and the contractors agree. Everybody agrees. So that these are the rules, and they have a mechanism to solve disputes so that the work gets done and everybody has, something in it. And it sets the floor for wages, for standards, safety and all of that stuff. It's conditions, all of that stuff. And it's all very clear and very written out. And I think it's a fabulous idea. And the idea that you would have, a federal institution, a federal anything, or state anything, you should have the same kind of floor where you say, you know what, we're not racing to the bottom. We're not looking for what Alan Shepard said about the space shuttle. Lowest bid got the contract. Would you feel comfortable knowing that the guy who was figuring out how to cut costs would put an 8-cent O-ring instead of a 20-cent O-ring in something that could make your ship blow up? Would you feel comfortable with that? Well, this is the kind of things that are going on. Because you've got these people who are, you need to maximize efficiency and figure out how to cut every corner so that we can profit. And I got to tell you, this is not the way I want my tax dollars spent. I don't believe in lowest bid contracting. I believe in best bid contracting. Simple stuff to me. Just how it is. Anyway, going to take a quick break. If you missed any portion of the program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you get the podcast. You get the Rick Smith Show app on your smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. Listen live anytime, 3 to 6, anywhere you are. It's right there. And also you can email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. I do answer all emails personally. Twitter at Rick Smith Show, Facebook, all of that stuff. Love to hear from you. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show.
Even if I look and act really crazy, I will wait till she betrayed me. Now my vision is no longer hazy. I'm very lucky to have my crew. Grace to find me when she flew. I've been knocked down, beat down, black and blue. She's not the one coming back for you. She's not the one coming back for you. If I fall back down, you're going to home again. If I fall back down, you're going to be my friend.
But let's set our sights higher than a single oil pipeline.
Vetoed. Obama nixes the Keystone XL pipeline.
These are scientists that cannot be challenged.
Exposed. Prominent climate denier scientist funded by fossil fuel industry.
9 criminal counts.
Busted. Duke Energy clipped by the feds. Plus,
So I was flabbergasted.
sorry deniers, climate change is not caused by the sun.
Also celebrated our 6th anniversary. From bradblog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
I don't expect to have to veto it because I expect they're going to have enough sense over on Capitol Hill to do the people's business.
Wrong again, Mr. President. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, it is our 6th anniversary of the Green News Report.
I know.
Congratulations to you.
And you.
And I want to thank all of our listeners and affiliate partners. Please stop on by greennews.bradblog.com and help us celebrate, or just stop by bradblog.com/donate to help us stay on the air. We really rely on you, and I'm not kidding. We don't have the Koch brothers, the American Petroleum Institute, the Southern Company, and all of these other fossil fuel companies who have been found to have paid off a phony baloney scientist that Wingnuts have been relying on for years, but I don't want to give away your story. So, Desi, what do you have for us today?
Well, we will get to that in a moment. But first, President Obama has vetoed a bill to fast-track the controversial Keystone XL pipeline. He did not veto it on the merits, but because he says it usurps executive branch authority. In vetoing it, he said, quote, it attempts to circumvent long-standing proven processes for determining national interest.
They do have the ability to override the veto with a 2/3 vote.
That's not very likely.
Well, that was easy.
Moving on, the climate change denial industry's favorite climate denier scientist is funded by fossil fuels.
What?
The New York Times reports that climate researcher Willie Soon, who has gained quite a bit of fame for denying the role of humans in driving climate change, has failed to disclose that he received more than $1 million from the fossil fuel industry and the Koch brothers front groups. In emails, Dr. Soon himself described his studies and his appearances before Congress to deny climate change as, quote, deliverables in exchange for fossil fuel funding.
So he was getting hundreds of thousands of dollars from the American Petroleum Institute, from ExxonMobil, from Koch brothers, from Southern Company, these huge energy interests, which he says was no secret, except for the fact that he failed to mention those conflicts of interest when he published his phony so-called scientific papers.
Yes, it's a huge violation of academic ethics, and he is now under investigation by Harvard University and the Smithsonian Institution, where he works, and by the journals that published his work.
Denier Gate.
Dr. Soon used fossil fuel funding to falsely claim that global warming is not caused by humans, but by the sun's variability. That has been repeatedly ruled out by actual climate scientists, like the University of California, Berkeley physicist and former skeptic, Dr. Richard Muller.
Who, by the way, was also funded by the Koch brothers before he discovered,
Hey, dummy, try carbon dioxide. Smack on. So I was flabbergasted. Not only was global warming real and roughly consistent with what the previous groups had said, but the match to carbon dioxide and the fact that solar variability was not responsible. We enable us to rule out the primary alternative theory.
So that was the Koch-funded scientist, Dr. Richard Muller, debunking the theory that Dr. Soon was peddling, that Senator James Inhofe was pointing to.
Yes.
I'll bet it doesn't even show up for a second on Fox News.
Finally, accountability is also visiting coal giant Duke Energy. The federal government has charged Duke Energy with 9 criminal violations of clean water laws, including for a massive coal ash spill at a Duke Energy coal facility last year that contaminated 70 miles of the Dan River in Virginia. The investigation of that spill led to the discovery that Duke Energy has been illegally dumping contaminated coal wastewater into North Carolina rivers for the last 5 years. Duke Energy has announced it has agreed to pay $100 million in fines and restitution obligation to settle the charges.
And yet no one is going to jail.
Yep.
All of these stories coming to a head today, we have been telling you about for years.
Even if the mainstream corporate media hasn't.
Please consider stopping by to help us celebrate our 6th anniversary of the Green News Report at greennews.bradblog.com, or, as I say, bradblog.com/donate. We really need your help. Thanks, guys. We're going to celebrate all week. Find us and like us on the Facebook and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your 6th anniversary Green News Report.
I'm gonna soak up the sun. I got my 45 on, so
I will oppose the Colombia Free Trade Agreement. I want Congress to pass a set of trade deals. Send a message to Congress to come to an agreement on trade deals.
'cause they're selling make-believe and we don't buy that here. 'Cause in the real world they're shutting Detroit down.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. And I got to be honest, I sat 20 feet from President Obama when he said that I'm not going to pass those bad trade deals. No, not gonna, but then he wasn't president then; he was candidate then. And he said, "I'm not going to pass Colombia. We're not going to do. We're not going to do Korea. We're not going to do any of that. Not going to happen. Especially not Colombia." Yet here we are, Korea, Colombia, Panama, all of them. The whole bad deal cocktail. And now the mother of all bad deals, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Free Trade Agreement, something they're pushing for. And, the thing that popped into my head yesterday, as we heard news that the president had vetoed the Keystone XL pipeline bill, the first thing I thought is tribunal. Good luck on the veto. It's not going to matter, because of this investor state dispute settlement clause that is in the Trans-Pacific Partnership Free Trade Agreement, but also part of NAFTA-SHAFTA, which means that we can make a law and these corporations can take us to a court that we have no control over. We, the people, have nothing to do with, and it can be imposed on us. Another reason, if you need a reason to oppose fast track and the TPP, this is it. Anyway, here to talk to us a little bit about Fast Track Authority and why we should be pushing to deny the president this authority is Melinda St. Louis. She's the International Campaigns Director for the good folks over at Public Citizens Global Trade Watch. Tradewatch.org is their website. Melinda, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks so much for having me on your show.
So, there are 2 points to this, and I think that you need to make very clear from the beginning. One is obviously the Trans-Pacific Partnership Free Trade Agreement, which is a horrible thing that we don't really know much about. But first is this Fast Track Authority that a lot of presidents of the past have wanted. Why do they want it, and why is this not a good idea?
Well, Fast Track is a very extreme delegation of the U.S. Congress's constitutional authority over trade to the executive branch. And this, I say that it's extreme because in absolutely no other scenario does Congress allow the executive to bring a bill, write their own bill, bypass the committee structure, force an up or down vote with no amendments, and control the congressional calendar. So this is, it's very much an abjugation of the checks and balances that are part of the U.S. Constitution. And so just on those grounds, it's very concerning. But it's even more concerning when we realize that the goal of this fast track is to be able to railroad a so-called trade agreement that has been negotiated completely behind closed doors, in secret, without public scrutiny, and then railroad that through the Congress with no ability for amendments or real public debate. And it makes you wonder why and what is in there that would mean that it has to have this extreme legislative luge run, as it's sometimes called, that through the U.S. Congress.
Wow, is that all?
Right, exactly.
Is that all? And what's interesting to me is, giving this president this kind of authority when you've got Republican majorities in both the House and the Senate, it's amazing. Look, they won't give him the authority to pick out which kind of bathroom tissue to put in the White House, let alone the authority over our entire economy and the ability. It's amazing to me that they're even considering giving this president, who they can't agree with anything on, this kind of authority.
Yeah, no, it's quite surprising. And, unfortunately, what I think it speaks to is the influence of big business and big money over, our political system. But the good news is that actually many members of Congress are standing up and saying no, including almost all Democrats in the House of Representatives are opposing their own president, who they agree with on many issues, but say, wait a second, these types of trade deals have a horrendous record in the United States. They've decimated our manufacturing base in the U.S. It's cost jobs. And has had these very detrimental impacts, like what you mentioned, with these corporate courts outside of our domestic court system, and allow our public interest legislation and rules to be challenged. And so, why would we want this? And why would President Obama even want this? And then there's a substantial part of the Republican Party that are saying, wait, this is we talk all about the checks and balances in the Constitution. Why would we want to grant more power over to the executive? And of course, those who, particularly are not happy with President Obama, why they would want to do such a thing either.
Well, I think to highlight your point that, you've got these corporate special interests that want to. Yesterday, I talked about a love letter from the American business community, and the I don't know if you've seen this.
Yeah, I saw that. That was amazing.
But the Chamber of Commerce came out with a love letter. Roses are red, violets are blue. I love TPP, and so should you. And I'm going, really? And I guess this really highlights who the winners and losers in this are. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce and their global corporate masters. They're the benefactors, and the rest of us, well, not so much.
Well, the Paul Krugman actually in the New York Times said, that he actually doesn't necessarily agree with us on all of these issues, but says no serious economist could possibly say that the reason to pass these agreements would be for economic growth or jobs. They just, those who are most optimistic and the biggest proponents, all they can point to are very, very modest potential gains, and unfortunately, they've always been wrong, because we've actually seen the opposite happen. And yet the likes of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce are saying this is their top priority. Well, that's very suspicious. What actually must be in there for them to be such cheerleaders for this? And, that love letter that you mentioned, it was very cynical. And in fact, one of the things that included in it was this, it was a very cynical reference to, we want to have 12 years of protection of data for biologic drugs, and, and saying that in kind of a funny way, when what that actually means by doing so would be an expansion of monopoly powers to big pharma to the tune of billions of dollars, that would actually mean that the president's own budget would be billions of dollars off, because the president himself, for the Affordable Care Act, was saying that they only wanted 7 years of data exclusivity. So an additional 5 years through the TPP would actually be a hugely expensive for the budget, and not to mention to people who need these life-saving drugs for cancer and so forth in other countries as well. So, it's quite cynical. It's very, and very upsetting to think that people's lives are being kind of joked with that way.
Yeah, well, what they said is they dropped to one knee and say, "I do," for gold.
Yeah, no, it's pretty unbelievable, and I think that speaks to why these interests are pushing fast track, and why those who, members of Congress who are actually listening to their constituents, listening to organized labor, to the environmental organizations, to the faith organizations, to family farm groups, to consumer advocates, are all united in saying no to fast track. And so I think we're really going to see who are the members who listen to constituents and who are the ones who are really just responding to, the campaign dollars that come from the biggest, from the 1%.
Yeah, and that's really the point that I've been taking. We don't really actually know what's in this trade agreement because I'm not allowed to see it. I don't know anyone who's actually seen the agreement. There are, as I understand, and you're the expert on this, I understand there are 600 trade advisors who I guess we used to call corporate lobbyists, but now we've given them a new title, that they're the ones who basically negotiated and wrote all this, but they don't live in my neighborhood. And they don't really have my interests at heart. And the fact that I'm not allowed to see it, this is one of the things that's frustrating to me, because President Obama said this was going to be one of the most transparent administrations in history, yet this trade deal, all backdoor.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's been even a step backwards than what we've seen in the past. You're absolutely correct. There's this trade advisory system. There are, almost all of those who are participating in this are explicitly represent corporations or industry associations. They have a password protected website where they get to see the textual proposals. They get to make comments. They get to be very much a part of the process, where the public is completely locked out. And, and so then again, you have to wonder, well, what must be in there? I mean, those who are at the table figuratively are the ones who are going to be able to kind of push their special interests through. And so that's why I think you see that these agreements, they may be branded as free trade agreements, but that's not what they are. They're very controlled agreements. They have, there's a lot of rules there, and they benefit those who are able to kind of stick in whatever special interest they have, such as this, this obscure, 12 years of protection of data for big pharma. And you see the Motion Picture Association trying to, make sure that small scale copyright violations that are when we use the internet are going to be criminalized in other countries and in a way that would be detrimental. And we see financial industry trying to undermine our financial regulation, and all of these behind closed doors in the name of so-called free trade. It's quite outrageous.
It's not just quite; it's absolutely outrageous. And to me, this is, from what I'm told, is the mother of all bad free trade agreements, and could be one of the last ones that we even see negotiated, because there's a docking agreement to this that, or as I say, a Me Too agreement. Yeah, Me Too. That could render, further negotiations in the future impossible.
Yeah, you're correct. I mean, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, it currently is with 12 nations that from every country from Japan to Vietnam to Chile, Australia are part of this negotiation. But, and it already is 40% of the global GDP is part of the TPP currently. But it would be open to other countries to join, including China, including other countries in the Pacific. And so the rules are, if we have these extreme rules, like these investment provisions that allow corporations to bypass our courts and raid our treasury for, environmental regulations that we pass, this is going to be, the standard that we're going to be having to live with. Before, unfortunately, we've seen this, in the North America Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA. We have 20 years of seeing what the impacts of that were, and it has not been good for the American middle class at all. And in fact, it's been, it's led to an increase in income inequality in the U.S. So instead of learning the lessons from that, why don't we just expand it, to almost half the globe? And then including in that, now the Obama administration is also negotiating an agreement with the European Union, which would be another 40%, of global GDP. And if we, and if these extreme, pro-corporate rules are locked in, it's going to be very, very difficult for us to be able to kind of really reclaim our democracy around all these really important issues of public policy making, again, that actually don't have anything to do with trade. They have to do with, how we protect the public in the United States and what the limits of our democracy are. And that's what's at stake with Fast Track, because both of those agreements that are being negotiated behind closed doors would just be brought back and railroaded through. So even, and that's why we're saying even, members of Congress who might typically be for these kinds of agreements are saying, wait a second, we don't actually know what's in there. We haven't been a part of this process. And the TPP, they've been doing this for more than 5 years. They're saying they're almost done. So, and now we have to just accept it without really knowing what's in it or really being able to have a debate. It shouldn't happen, and I think that's why there is a massive movement to oppose it, both in Congress and for constituencies to across the board need to be contacting their member of Congress now and saying this is going to come up pretty soon. There's going to be an attempt by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and by the big business lobby to really push this through, and we need to stop it, and we can, like we have in the past, but it's going to take a lot of grassroots advocacy because there's a lot of money behind this trying to push this behind closed doors.
And one of the best ways to get involved is go simply to the website stopfasttrack.com. Lots of information, lots of opportunities to get involved and contact your representatives and say, no, I don't want it. Also, tradewatch.org, another really good website if you want more information, more thoughts on this. In a lot of what you laid out there, I'm thinking of some of my sovereign citizen friends on the extreme right wing who, are worried about, one world government. This could really be that one world government that isn't really a government.
No, absolutely. I mean, this truly is. I mean, people who are worried about sovereignty, this is global governance, and it's governance that is cemented in place. These are binding rules that we have to change our laws to make sure to comply with what is agreed to in this agreement. This is basically diplomatically legislating what we do in our country. And if we do not do so, we can face trade sanctions. We can face these, corporations can bring our laws before these tribunals that have nothing to do with our court system. They can force us to pay millions or even billions of dollars in compensation. Like what you mentioned at the beginning, I mean, around Keystone or if we ban a toxic substance at the state level, that can be attacked. If a state decides they want to have a timeout on fracking, that can be challenged. In fact, it is being challenged in Canada right now under these types of tribunals. So, I think that a lot is at stake, and we have to stand up now, and we have to say that. We have to say no. And, as I mentioned, we've done this before. In the late 90s, there was an attempt to push through the free trade area of the Americas, which was going to expand NAFTA to the whole Western Hemisphere. That was defeated because of citizen opposition. Fast Track was defeated in the U.S. Congress, and then they stopped negotiating. They weren't able to conclude because that project was just too much corporate greed. And I think what we've seen is that the corporations have regrouped. They're trying to do it through the Trans-Pacific Partnership and through Fast Track now. And it's time, we need to push back again, and citizens need to stand up. And going to stopfasttrack.com is a good way to get started. exposethetpp.org is a website that has very clear information about how this could affect everything from financial stability to food safety to internet freedom to medicine prices. And people need to get educated. They need to tell their member of Congress that to vote no and to publicly say that they will not support Fast Track.
There you go. We'll make sure we get links at thericksmithshow.com. Last question I've got, and I wanted to go back to something you said, from the love letter, the 12 years of protection of regulatory data and all of that. What happens in the 13th year? Because, one of my thoughts was when I read that letter, I'm going, well, how short-sighted is this? The Chinese are thinking 25, 50 years into the future. I guess we're usually thinking quarter to quarter, but what happens in the 13th year?
Well, so, what this is about is what the 12 years is basically, pharmaceutical companies have patents that give them monopolies for a certain period of time.
Right.
And their goal of that is to, is to supposedly, recoup their investment that they might have in research and development. What we're learning is that actually almost all of the research and development comes from public resources already.
Right.
And
They're just
so-
gouging us.
Yeah, so it's a way to gouge, and the 12 years is additional because basically it's making it even more difficult for there to be generic competition because they're saying that they want to protect their data even beyond what the monopoly would be, and so it basically kind of extends the monopoly without saying so. And I mean, it's simply a way to just try to keep prices high as long as they possibly can. And these are drugs that we're talking about that cost, $100,000 a year, for a treatment, for example, for cancer. And it makes, if it's in the public system like Medicare or so forth, that, can bankrupt our budget. And if it's in the private system, imagine what that means.
You're dead.
Yeah, exactly.
You're
And
dead.
and that's why actually many countries, even in the TPP, are resisting this in the negotiations. I mean, Vietnam is in this negotiations. They're with their HIV/AIDS crisis. I mean, there's no way they could afford something like this. And so, so it's life and death in some places. It's budget busting elsewhere. And so this is just a way that it's just one example. And again, unfortunately, you could just go through the text if we were able to be able to find all these little goodies, stuck in there that are public, are special interest rent seeking, basically, by big business.
Yeah, pushing the free market. I
Right.
look at this and I go, what happened to the free market? What happened to the invisible hand?
Yeah, I mean, and that, and that's what these tribunals are. I mean, basically, it's business is saying we are going to invest somewhere, but we don't want to take any risk. We want the public to pay whatever risk we have. But if we earn profits, that's all private, and so, if regulation changes and suddenly I'm not making as much money as I thought I was going to because I actually wanted just to be able to pollute, or maybe I, thought that it would, climate change, who cares? And I'd like to just make as much as I can next quarter, but there's been, an environmental policy that's changed. Well, you need to compensate me for that. And by the way, domestic businesses don't have that same right. Only foreign corporations do.
Nice.
And citizens don't have that right. So, I mean, it's people almost can't believe it when you tell them about it, but unfortunately it is what is in there. I mean, we say we don't know what's in it, but we actually, on that case, we actually saw a leaked text and we know that that's what's in there. And so that, and I mean, what we're talking about are things that of the few little pieces that have leaked, and that only, and then you think, oh, what else is in there that we haven't even seen?
Yeah, how bad can it possibly be?
Right.
Melinda, I appreciate you taking time for us. Thanks so much. Great information.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
All righty, Melinda St. Louis. She's an international campaigns director with Public Citizens Global Trade Watch. The websites you got to have, stopfasttrack.com, exposethetpp.com, and tradewatch.org. We've got links at thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back. Stick around and listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Gonna work on Maggie's farm no more.
Exposing that free trade is never free. The Rick Smith Show.
Would you dive 14 feet deep in the Susquehanna to keep a bridge safe? Would you spend night after night with prisoners to keep your community safe? Would you spend Christmas Eve plowing snow to keep roads safe? AFSCME members do. Men and women who choose to serve in public service. Mine inspectors, 911 dispatchers, healthcare workers, parole agents. You may not think about them, but no, they're all thinking about you. This message brought to you by AFSCME Council 13.
Where family values are more than slogans. The Rick Smith Show.
Controls the past now. Controls the future. Controls the present now. Controls the past. Controls the past now. Controls the future. Controls the present now. Now testify.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Again, stopfasttrack.com, the website. To me, this is one of those moments where you absolutely have to go, it's bad. It's bad. NAFTA was bad. Understand, NAFTA had to change. When Mexico signed on, they literally had to change their constitution. So if you're one of those folks who, look, I fear one world order as much as the next guy. I've never been afraid of one world government because I know governments will never be able to, they'll never be able to mesh. It's never going to happen. You're never going to have one. But one world corporate rule, I can see that, where the idea is, hey, the number of us, we big corporations, the 150, 200, maybe even 500, we're going to then, just gouge and rape and pillage everybody else, which is basically what's been going on for the last, 30, 40, 50, 100 years. But not to the extent that I see us going forward. When you look at these bad trade deals, look at NAFTA and you look at Chorus and you look at Panama and Colombia and all of them, the GATT, WTO, all of this bad global trade stuff. It's not benefited you and me. It just hasn't. We may think, hey, we get cheap stuff, but we also get our cheaper wages and a destruction of our local say. Understand, and the last thing I want to get to this before we have to break, any local procurement, any Buy American provisions, hey, we're building a bridge here in Pennsylvania, we have to use Pennsylvania steel if we're using, because that makes sense, doesn't it? If you're in Indiana, you say, we want to use Indiana steel because we want those jobs to be here. That would all be illegal. And if you did it after the fact, they could come back and sue you for the costs of doing it. And I fully expect, this TransCanada, I fully expect them to sue us in the tribunal over Obama's veto of the Keystone XL. Look, they're not still taking property through eminent domain. They're not still buying up land as we speak and preparing because they think they're going to lose. They've got the end game, which at the end of it, they know bad trade deal. Right back.
Me and my people are just about due. I'm a massive airstrike on a beautiful night. Yeah, it's my song I'm singing. Somebody better start counting. We're coming out swinging.
Not right wing, just right. The Rick Smith Show.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. The Wisconsin State Senate Wednesday night passed the controversial anti-union right-to-work bill on a vote of 17 to 15. Here's what it sounded like in the Senate gallery when that bill passed.
Senator from the 13th.
Immediately message to the Assembly.
The senator asked unanimous consent that the bill be immediately messaged to the Senate. Assembly. Senator from the 13th.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that we adjourn according to skeleton session tomorrow.
President asks unanimous consent. We adjourn till skeletal session tomorrow. Without objection, we're adjourned.
You're either with the workers or with the rebellion.
Another frigid, snowy winter's day, another Wisconsin labor rally at the state capitol protesting the so-called right-to-work bill. The Republicans are fast-tracking through the state legislature. Wisconsin AFL-CIO President Phil Neuenfeld.
What are we doing here? Well, we're here to fight for a better and brighter Wisconsin. A Wisconsin where all workers have the freedom to a family-supporting job with decent wages and benefits. A Wisconsin where all workers have the right to form a union. We are standing up for democracy and the middle class. Let's keep up the fight. Let's keep the solidarity alive. Together, workers indivisible. Solidarity, unity, from one and all sides.
Labor is rallying again at Wisconsin's capital this Saturday. Bill Carroll is a Teamster with Local 344.
We are here to protest this right to work legislation that's being jammed down the throats of working people in this state. The name right to work is an illusion, and it's meant to fool and deceive people. It has nothing to do with the right to work. It has everything to do with eroding workers' voice on the job, unions, and organized labor's influence.
Thousands of United Teachers of Los Angeles members are rallying today to demand smaller class sizes, fully staffed schools, clean and safe schools, and fair compensation for teachers. The LA Teachers Union says labor talks with the district are at an impasse, and they say they're joined in the fight for quality public education by students, parents, and community groups, as well as other teachers' unions in California and beyond. This report made possible in part through underwriting from the Bank of Labor. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
The proud defender of the American dream, Rick Smith.
American workers versus multi-millionaires. They want to end Social Security and Medicare. While millions in this country don't have a dime to spare. Can Main Street get a bailout? Tell the president our checks weren't mailed out.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. So this weekend, the Harrisburg Mall, the great Regal, great cinema out there, they're going to be showing the movie Selma. And the Dauphin County Democratic Party and a number of groups are coming together to have a showing, a nice screening, and a little discussion before. I'm going to come out and have a couple of minutes. But to talk a little bit about about Selma, the movie, and the organizing that hopefully will spring out of events like these all across the country, I've asked Rosette Harris. She's the chair of the Dauphin County Democratic Committee. Rosette, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So, I mean, I look at these kind of grassroots organizing opportunities and go, this is fantastic stuff. We should be doing much more of this kind of organizing.
Yes, and I'm excited that private screenings such as this are taking place all over the country. And when I saw the movie myself a month ago, I knew that this was something that we should do here in Dauphin County. And I'm excited that about 140 students, high school students from all across Dauphin County, are going to be able to see this movie. I think it's important for them to see it and to understand what the past has done to ensure their right to vote.
Yeah, you know,
and I'm just excited that so many groups have come together with us to bring this to them.
You know, because, you know, in having these conversations about the past and looking at things today, you know, just my daughter and I just had this conversation not too long ago about we had done a cross-country labor history tour where we went to places like Knoxville, Tennessee, to the Highlander Center, and we went to Memphis to see where Dr. King was assassinated, but also talk about the sanitation strike. And, you know, I kept telling her, you know, the organizing that's going on today is much like it was back then with the sanitation strike and the whole I Am a Man campaign, very, very similar to the Black Lives Matter campaign of people getting into the streets, organizing, and educating themselves.
Yes, there's a lot of similarities, and it's important for everyone to realize, too, that every vote does count. I know with myself, with the chair race, with being elected as the first African-American chair of the Dauphin County Democratic Committee, I had to have 74 votes to win, and I actually got 74 votes on that first vote. So I'm an example that shows that every vote counts, and there's lots of other examples out there as well. And I think every movement, whether it's civil rights, labor, women, whatever that movement is, needs to encourage people to vote to make that change.
See, I think all of those movements should be one, because I think at the end of it, we all have the same basic needs, basic rights at heart: the right to vote, the right to clean air and water, to a decent living, the decent education. I think all of them have the same basic tenets.
Yes, I agree.
So, I mean, because what's happened in this country, Rogette, and you know this as well as anyone, we've been sliced and diced and pitted against each other. You're black, white, green, whatever. We've been, you know, male, female, white collar, blue collar, green collar, whatever. We've been pitted against one another. And until we can figure out how to heal those divides, I don't know that we can go forward.
I agree. And one thing I do like about this movie is it shows the different races that actually marched in Selma. It was people from all over the country, different ages, different genders, different races, coming together for that one goal to ensure equal voting rights for all. And I think that's a powerful message that is shown in the movie that I hope gets across to the students who see.
And what I hope the students see when they see this is how important that right to the ballot box is, and not just it's a constant. It is the fundamental building block of the entire American experience. That right to that ballot box, that right to cast and self-governance.
Yes. And this is also a kickoff to our voter registration drive. So those students eligible to register to vote will be able to register right there on the spot.
That's fantastic. Because at the end of this, you want to pull these young people in to be the next leaders of a movement, moving us forward and making their lives better.
Exactly.
So, any chance people can go to this? Are we busting at the seams, sold out? Is there another one planned?
Not right now. Unfortunately, well, it's a good thing, but we're sold out for the showing on Saturday. Unfortunately, we have had to turn people away. Maybe we could do another showing in the future, but right now, this is the only one.
Yeah, I mean, because when I heard it was sold out, I go, that's fantastic, because it shows that, because I truly believe that people want to be part of something, that they want to be part of making not just their lives better, but their communities better. And seeing this kind of organizing, I think, is important, not just for the individuals involved, but for society. And I guess re-educating us, if you will, in how to become involved. Because I think for so long, we've been told that we're the individual, you go your own path, make your own deal, that maybe we've forgotten how to work collaboratively.
Yes, I agree. And everyone needs someone. We all need to help each other to get to where we all need to be. So hopefully this is the start of that in Dauphin County.
Yeah,
and the encouragement of so many different groups coming together is just great.
I can't wait to come out and talk to folks and see how this works itself out, because with the 50th anniversary coming up, and we're trying to figure out our way to get out to the 50th anniversary march at the beginning of March. In looking at this, it's a great educational opportunity for folks to look back and go, it was a hard struggle to get just to where we are. We're not where we want to be, but it was a struggle getting just to here.
It has been a struggle. We don't want to go backwards. I'm sure, as you know, back in 2013, the Supreme Court actually gutted a large piece of the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you go back to 2000 even, when Jeb Bush, who's now wanting to run for president, put Katherine Harris in charge of their voter rolls, and they booted some 90,000 people off the voting rolls for the crime of voting while black. Because most of the people thrown off because their names sounded like they might be felons just happened to be black voters.
And that's something else that we're going to be working on here in Dauphin County. If you are a felon, as you know, you can register and vote in this state. We want to make sure that they know the rights and vote along with the rest of us. So that's another piece of the puzzle that we need to work on as well.
It's all part of that education, because at the end of the day, we want engaged, informed voters and people who are actually going to vote, because, look, there's some real ugliness coming up. I don't know if you saw it here the other day, but they pushed through a constitutional amendment out of the state government committee trying to go out to push this paycheck deception thing, this paycheck destruction thing, trying to use a constitutional amendment, knowing that in off-year elections, a lot of people stay at home. And this, to me, it's those off-year elections that are so very important. And actually, those are the ones that affect your life the most. Those are the ones you should be voting in.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
I shouldn't be telling the
that we
chair.
have to work on.
I shouldn't be telling that to the chair of the Democratic Party in Dauphin County, but I think people need to hear that. It's those elections, your county commissioner, your county dog catcher. It's those folks. They're the ones who affect your life immediately, directly, right in your face.
Yes. Yes, you are preaching to the choir on that. And that's something that we all need to work on, is making sure people understand that, which goes back to the education piece.
And I know you guys are doing a whole bunch of work around that. And I hope you keep up the great work. I can't wait for Saturday. I'm looking forward to seeing the faces and hear the comments of what they experience as this movie goes on. Because for me, that's kind of the exciting part, to see how they filter the information that's in front of them.
Yes, and we are having two students actually speak from Milton Hershey. They're 11th graders. They actually wrote an essay based on the movie, and they've been going around to their classes at Milton Hershey and trying to get their students to see the importance of voting. And they're going to be sharing their essay with us on Saturday.
Oh,
so I'm looking forward to hear from the students themselves.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear that as well. Because I look at my kids, and one of the reasons we did the cross country labor history tour is my oldest daughter came home from class, and you go through that. Hey, what'd you do today? What'd you learn? And she said, we learned about Rosa Parks. And I go, well, what did you learn? And she was tired. That was the answer. She was tired. I go, that's it? That's all? Well, yeah. What else is there? And, we went to the Highlander Center in Knoxville, Tennessee, to learn about all of the organizing that went into that moment, because none of that stuff just happened. There was a movement behind it. There were exercises to take the abuse that they knew was coming. There's all of that. And when my daughter experienced that, her eyes opened wider. And I think a younger generation needs to see that, people really did put an awful lot into those things that we now say, she was tired.
Right.
Simple stuff. Rogette, I appreciate you taking time for us. I look forward to seeing you on Saturday at the event. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Rogette Harris, she's the chairperson of the Dauphin County Democratic Party. Their website, dauphindems.com. We've got a link at thericksmithshow.com. Just click on her name, take you right there. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Get old. Don't let us get stupid, all right. Just make us be brave, make us play nice. Let us be together tonight.
Thought-provoking, intelligent conversation with a heart. The voice of the working class, Rick Smith. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1972, marking the day of the Buffalo Creek flood in West Virginia. The Pittston Coal Company's waste impoundment dam failed during heavy rain, causing more than 130 million gallons of water and coal waste to flood the valley below. Shirley Markham of Lundale described what happened. The only warning we had was just a woman neighbor who spotted it and pulled in front of our house and hollered, "Run! The dam has broken!" The flood killed 125 people, including whole families. 7 bodies, 6 of them children, were never found. The flood caused some $50 million in damage, and 4,000 residents lost their homes. Government officials suggested building 750 units of public housing for those affected. Only 17 homes and 90 apartments were ever built. The Pittston Coal Company declared the disaster an act of God. 3 separate investigating commissions disagreed and found the coal company responsible. They found that the Pittston Coal Company had disregarded safety practices. Even though the company was to blame for the disaster, they never faced criminal charges, and no one served a day behind bars for what the Citizens Commission concluded was murdering of at least 124 men, women, and children. The company did eventually settle its lawsuits. After legal fees, each family impacted by the flood received a meager $13,000. One positive result of the disaster was that West Virginia implemented stricter regulations and inspections of coal dams in the state. This song, Black Water, commemorates the Buffalo Creek flood of 1972.
Coal company say God is to blame. They built the dam, but he brought the rain. Truth was known throughout the land. Never to trust a company man.
Tales of American Political History with Clinton Porter Hackney.
We've been discussing some facts about terrorism and the American terrorist group known as the Galleanisti. The Galleanisti were the followers of Luigi Galleani that carried out bombings and assassination attempts across the United States for almost 20 years, beginning in 1914. Galleani attracted dozens of active followers in the U.S., some who carried out multiple bombings every year, often at the doorsteps of public officials. The worst of all came on September 16, 1920. With good weather in New York City, it was normal for there to be a large outdoor crowd enjoying lunch and walking from place to place on Wall Street. At straight up noon, a horse-drawn wagon plodded its way along until it arrived directly across from 23 Wall Street, the headquarters of J.P. Morgan Bank on the financial district's busiest corner. Join us again for the largest terrorist attack on American soil prior to 9/11. This is Clinton Porter Hackney at cphackney.com.
Chances are, when you took a shower this morning, an AFSCME member made sure that water was clean. When you drove to work, an AFSCME member maintained the road. When you rode an elevator, an AFSCME member inspected it. I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. AFSCME members enforce regulations, keep prisoners behind bars, take care of patients, protect the environment, and more. The work isn't glamorous, the salaries aren't high, but AFSCME members serve the public in every aspect of our daily lives. Chances are, you'll never see that AFSCME member working in a sewage plant, diving underwater to repair a bridge, or answering a 911 call. But aren't you glad they do? For more information, visit AFSCME13.org. We are AFSCME.
Grandmother worked in the kitchen, making bread and flour and wheat. Right off the boat from Finland to live in the land of the free. He was working them oven, sweating in summer's heat. On the floor from 1 till midnight, 7 days a week. And Grandma told him, you better slow down. He didn't pay no mind. If it wasn't for him to get Sundays off, he'd have died long before his time. Mad in America, fitting to tie, wondering how it got this way. Mad in America, unemployed.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. So the Facebook shuttle drivers, we talked about this not too long ago. We had Roma Lois, the Teamster president, out on the local, I think it was 853 out there in California, on the program, talking about these Facebook drivers who, basically they were working all day long and only got paid when they were driving, and the conditions and all of this stuff. And they came to the union and said, hey, we want to join a union. We're tired of getting ripped off. We're tired of having our wages ripped off. We're tired of all the bad conditions. And I guess it was just the other day, they voted unanimously to affiliate with the Teamsters and approve their contract. And this is fantastic. Now, under the new contract, from what I understand, drivers will see a wage increase. They'll earn between $21 and $28.50 an hour, to do the loop there in the millionaire central. The ones who are driving all these people around, they should at least make a decent wage. Now, I understand tomorrow there's going to be a vote for another transport company, this Compass Transportation, who shuttles Apple, Yahoo, Gentac, and a couple others. They're doing the same thing. They're saying, hey, look at what they got. We'd like that too. We'd like decent wages. And what we found that was part of the contract, aside from the wage increases, seniority, guaranteed hours, where if you show up to work, you're going to at least get, whatever, 4, 6, 8, 10 hours, whatever you're supposed to get. Guaranteed overtime, where, hey, you probably got ripped off before, paid for jury duty, paid holidays that they didn't have. Whenever Facebook takes off, you get a paid holiday. I think that's great. A vacation structure, where obviously the longer you're there, the more you get, up to 5 weeks of paid vacation, personal leave for, a couple of paid days of personal time, paid bereavement, sick days, a grievance process. And then you get into the other stuff, healthcare, retirement, the stuff that unions should really be saying, look, this is what we do, not just for our members, but for all workers. Because when you have a driver at Facebook who's making a decent wage, who's got health care, who's got a pension, who's got all these other things, you then start having the other people go, we'd like them too. And those companies go, we don't want a union. No. We'll give them to you here. We'll give you something more. And that raises everyone's conditions. That's the pressure upward. So I think it's fantastic that these Facebook drivers have. And now I don't feel quite so bad about using Facebook. Good for them. But you know what was interesting? As I'm reading the article in the Silicon Valley newspaper, it made me kind of chuckle because at the end of it, in bold letters says, does labor organizing of contractors at Silicon Valley tech companies threaten Silicon Valley's economic growth? And I'm going, really? You had to add that to this story? Because I don't think it does. I think what it actually does is it will help Silicon Valley, those communities around there. It'll help them a lot. Because you know what? Those guys that are making $28 an hour, they're going to spend it. They're going to spend a lot of it. In fact, they'll probably spend most of it, if not all. And I think that helps economic growth. So at the end of it, you got to have this conversation of how do we grow an economy in the right way? How do we grow a bigger middle class in the right way? Obviously, the stealing economy didn't work. Stealing from the poor to give to the rich, that didn't work. Reverse Robin Hood, not so good. All it did was cause more pain, misery, and suffering. And for me, I've often wondered, in this country where everybody's got a gun, how is it that we haven't seen, and maybe it hasn't gotten bad enough, how is it we haven't seen the militia, Minutemen or whatever, storming the gates of the Bastille of the corporate class? Oh, that's right. They've got the others. They've still got the Mexicans and the others to go after. That's right. You're right. Because they're the reason. It's those others are the reason that these workers were getting screwed all these years. It's their fault. Just amazing stuff to me. And I guess it leaves you scratching your head on a certain level that, maybe it comes down to things have to get so much worse. But good on the Facebook drivers, and the hope is that the rest of them will come around because, as I've said, the whole idea of having that voice, having that contract, having that seniority, having all of those things, I think really is good structure for society beyond good economics and good business. Look, I can't tell you how many business owners I've talked to who, are small to medium-sized business owners who said, as soon as we went union, my problem stopped. My employment problem stopped. I got someone to take care of my headaches. I got someone to go recruit people for me because they were always, hey, we've got members. You need workers. We got members. And you got people that kept your workforce in line. And this is something that, the unions don't say because they're no good at tooting their own horn. But I'll tell you, I've met a lot of business owners, 5, 10, 20 people who, they have a contract and they abide by it. I think of the guy who does all my printing. He said, look, I'd gone through, tons of people. I'd gone through, all of this stuff. As soon as I signed that contract, I knew what I had to pay. She knew my employees knew what they were going to get. And there was no bickering. Everything was on the open. Everything was on the table. And everybody's happy because now it's just about doing your business. And I think that, that's one of those things. And they also provided healthcare benefits and all kind of stuff. But you can't get that through the corporate class mentality because you've got very distinct interests of business. You've got the mega corporate interests, and then you got everybody else who's just trying things like me as a small business owner, trying to make it to the next day. Simple stuff. Anyway, today in labor history, a little bit of quick history. Bethlehem Steelworkers were on strike for union recognition. The year was 1941, and I think back to my ex-wife's father was a worker there at the Bethlehem Steel, and you think about a guy who barely had an 8th grade education, who did very well for himself and his family, sent his daughter off to college, started his son off in a business, was able to do all this stuff. Why? Good union job. Also, today, 1885, the Congress okayed the contract labor law, which clamped down on companies going overseas or to places like Mexico and having people come back and recruiting from abroad to bring in migrant and immigrant labor. One of the reasons labor supported it at the time was that, look, they were bringing in all of these immigrant workers to break their contracts, to break the union organizing, and to flood the market with cheap labor so that, well, you made desperation class economics the rule of the day. And also, as you heard in the labor history in 2, today is the day that the Buffalo Creek Valley was flooded thanks to 130 million gallons of slurry and slime and just imagine a tsunami of black water with big coal chunks in it. Flooded the entire 17-mile long valley. And earlier in the program, when it played, I got an email from John asking about the song that we used at the end of it. And it's written by a guy named Scott Holston. He is evidently the voice of West Virginia, and really some great music that he does. And I decided that he asked about the song, and I just said, you know what, I think I'm going to play the whole song because it's one of those that I like. I kind of like the song. So I'm going to play the Scott Holston song. It's called Black Water. It commemorates the West Virginia Buffalo Creek Valley flood that happened on this day back in 1972. Quick break, right back after this.
And the story I'll tell you will give you a cheer about a valley of people, men, children, and wives, and how the rich man's greed stole their lives. Black water, so black and so deep, and under black water forever I'll sleep. Death angels are calling out to me. Black water is rolling down Buffalo Creek. Coal company said God is to blame. They built the dam, but he brought the rain. Truth was known throughout the land. Never to trust a company man. Black water, so black and so deep. And under black water forever I'll sleep. Death angels are calling out to me. Black water is rolling down Buffalo Creek. Death was the scene, even high in the tree. Fathers and children and mothers to be, nowhere to run as black water comes down. And so is the life of a coal mining town. Black water, so black and so deep. And under black water forever I'll sleep. Death angels are calling out to me. Black water is rolling down Buffalo Creek. Black water is rolling down Buffalo Creek.
Well, let's set our sights higher than a single oil pipeline.
Vetoed. Obama nixes the Keystone XL pipeline.
These are scientists that cannot
Exposed. Prominent climate denier scientist funded by fossil fuel industry.
9 criminal counts.
Busted. Duke Energy clipped by the feds. Plus,
So I was flabbergasted.
sorry deniers, climate change is not caused by the sun.
Also celebrated our 6th anniversary. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
I don't expect to have to veto it because I expect they're going to have enough sense over on Capitol Hill to do the people's business.
Wrong again, Mr. President. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, it is our 6th anniversary of the Green News Report.
I know.
Congratulations to you.
And you.
And I want to thank all of our listeners and affiliate partners. Please stop on by greennews.bradblog.com and help us celebrate, or just stop by bradblog.com/donate to help us stay on the air. We really rely on you, and I'm not kidding. We don't have the Koch brothers, the American Petroleum Institute, the Southern Company, and all of these other fossil fuel companies who have been found to have paid off a phony baloney scientist that Wingnuts have been relying on for years, but I don't want to give away your story. So, Desi, what do you have for us today?
Well, we will get to that in a moment. But first, President Obama has vetoed a bill to fast-track the controversial Keystone XL pipeline. He did not veto it on the merits, but because he says it usurps executive branch authority. In vetoing it, he said, quote, "It attempts to circumvent long-standing proven processes for determining national interest."
They do have the ability to override the veto with a 2/3 vote.
That's not very likely.
Well, that was easy.
Moving on, the climate change denial industry's favorite climate denier scientist is funded by fossil fuels.
What?
The New York Times reports that climate researcher Willie Soon, who has gained quite a bit of fame for denying the role of humans in driving climate change, has failed to disclose that he received more than $1 million from the fossil fuel industry and the Koch brothers front groups. In emails, Dr. Soon himself described his studies and his appearances before Congress to deny climate change as, quote, deliverables in exchange for fossil fuel funding.
So he was getting hundreds of thousands of dollars from the American Petroleum Institute, from ExxonMobil, from Koch brothers, from Southern Company, these huge energy interests, which he says was no secret, except for the fact that he failed to mention those conflicts of interest when he published his phony so-called scientific papers.
Yes, it's a huge violation of academic ethics, and he is now under investigation by Harvard University and the Smithsonian Institution, where he works, and by the journals that published his work.
Denier Gate.
Dr. Soon used fossil fuel funding to falsely claim that global warming is not caused by humans, but by the sun's variability. That has been repeatedly ruled out by actual climate scientists, like the University of California, Berkeley physicist and former skeptic, Dr. Richard Muller.
Who, by the way, was also funded by the Koch brothers before he discovered,
Hey, dummy, try carbon dioxide. Smack on. So I was flabbergasted. Not only was global warming real and roughly consistent with what the previous groups had said, but the match to carbon dioxide and the fact that solar variability was not responsible. They want us to rule out the primary alternative theory.
So that was the Koch-funded scientist, Dr. Richard Muller, debunking the theory that Dr. Soon was peddling, that Senator James Inhofe was pointing to.
Yes.
I'll bet it doesn't even show up for a second on Fox News.
Finally, accountability is also visiting coal giant Duke Energy. The federal government has charged Duke Energy with 9 criminal violations of clean water laws, including for a massive coal ash spill at a Duke Energy coal facility last year that contaminated 70 miles of the Dan River in Virginia. The investigation of that spill led to the discovery that Duke Energy has been illegally dumping contaminated coal wastewater into North Carolina rivers for the last 5 years. Duke Energy has announced it has agreed to pay $100 million in fines and restitution to settle the charges.
And yet no one is going to jail.
Yep.
All of these stories coming to a head today. We have been telling you about for years.
Even if the mainstream corporate media hasn't.
Please consider stopping by to help us celebrate our 6th anniversary of the Green News Report at greennews.bradblog.com, or, as I say, bradblog.com/donate. We really need your help. Thanks, guys. We're going to celebrate all week. Find us and like us on the Facebook and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your 6th anniversary Green News Report.
I'm gonna soak up the sun. I got my 45 on, so I can rock on.
News of the day. This is the Rick Smith Show.
So it was reported that last night the president was at Florida International University, and he vowed that they're going to go after and they're going to fight for his executive order on immigration. They're going to they don't want to go deporting all these people, and they're going to fight for it in the court, because this Texas judge decided he was going to halt the immigration executive order. But while taking a couple shots at Republicans, he did, I think, come out with something that just made the right wing's heads explode. I didn't hear the collective explosion, but I got to imagine that it happened, because the president said now over the long term, this is going to be solved, talking about immigration, because at some point there's going to be a President Rodriguez, or there's going to be a President Chin. He said this is a nation of immigrants, and ultimately it will reflect who we are, and its politics will reflect who we are, and that is not something to be afraid of. And saying that to the Afraid of Everything party. Anyway, here to talk about what's going on at the Crazy Pack, and I wish I could go to these things. I got to figure it out. Justin Duckham, Talk Radio News Service. Justin, welcome.
Hey, great to be here, Rick. That's great. There's never going to be a President Gingrich, and that's just awesome.
From your lips, and I'm hoping there's not going to be a President Walker or another President Bush or a President Paul. The hope is none of them.
Yeah, no, I mean, that seems pretty fair. I guess we already had a President Bush, though, maybe 2 of them. So, we can't really look at that one.
I did say not another.
Oh, okay. My bad. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No more Bushes. We've done that, been down that road. We don't need to go again. But today, really great speeches. I understand that this Carly Fiorina, I can't even say her name, who lost in 2010 in the California Senate race. She was packed between Christie and Cruz. How did she do?
I think she was received pretty well. I haven't really been able to read any responses to it. She's been kind of floated around as a potential, sort of pro-business Romney candidate, somebody who, hasn't really been changing with a lot of these social conservatives types things, even though, she has those sort of connections. When she's running for the governor of California, if you looked at those who were supporting her, they were kind of, we have like some of the more sketchier people in California politics in terms of, formerly racist candidates and whatnot behind her. But, at this point, she's not necessarily a top-tier candidate. And, kicking off her political career as being a loser against a, long-term, incumbent and a record anti-incumbent here is probably not the best way to start your message.
Yeah, but, I read that she's a dark horse presidential campaign candidate, and I'm going, could she be the next Michelle Bachmann? Could this be my Snow White? I don't think so.
She's not that kind of she's not that kind of girl, man.
All right. I was hoping.
Yeah, no. I mean, no. She's if anything, she's a
corporatist.
She knows business. Yeah, she's a corporatist. She's brutal. She knows stuff. She's just as looking in no sense, but I don't think anyone would really accuse her of being.
All right.
Dumb.
I can hope,
Yeah.
can I? I can hope. I'm still searching. I'm looking for Snow White.
I'm sure you are, but Michelle Bachmann's gone, and you have to accept that and realize that, man.
Yeah, I got to move on, and so, but still can look because is she at Crazy Pat? Because I got to be honest, there was part of me that thought she was going to poke her head in again.
I've been keeping an eye out for her. I haven't seen her yet. I know she was here for most years, but last time I was here, she told me just basically that she was still mulling a future in politics. She was still mulling another presidential run, but so far she's nowhere to be seen, which means that. She may not, shockingly, be planning another presidential run. Who knows?
So in looking at the folks that are there, because, some of the stories that I was reading and some of the analysis that the social conservatives are being pushed out of Crazy Pack, that it's really being taken over by the corporatist wing, that it's really now more about business than the social issues. What kind of feel are you getting from the people who are there?
I think that's actually a pretty good way to describe it. This is, I guess, a party that really wants to win this time around. We've seen a lot of enthusiasm for, people who aren't necessarily Tea Party candidates, although they're still typically a little bit to the right of, Jeb Bush in most people's imagination. We saw a lot of, support here for Christie. We saw Ben Carson getting a lot of, followers around here. Ted Cruz, however, hasn't really been talked about as much from what I've been able to tell. And weirdly enough, this time around, we don't really see, the crazy Ron Paul kids in record numbers. So,
oh, good.
Which is weird. Because Ron Paul typically has supporters down here, or Rand Paul and whatnot, primarily because they're all college kids and it's free to get in here if you're in college. But yeah, so far they haven't made up their typical contingent yet. So that's a little bit disappointing, I guess.
So no Paul bots. So sad. Because when we were up there in 2012, when we were up in New Hampshire for the primary, we stayed in the hotel with all the Paul bots, and I realized what they're, because you go, well, why are you supporting Ron Paul? Liberty and freedom, and I go, well, explain that to me, and they really couldn't articulate it. Until later that evening, as they were vomiting all over the lobby and spilling, food and beer and all kinds of stuff all over the hallway. So it came to me that liberty and freedom was about trashing people's hotels and making extra work for people that they wouldn't have to do.
Yep. Typically that's what the libertarian movement has really essentially become. And actually, Sarah Palin's talking right now. I'm watching her while talking to you. I'm sorry if I'm a little bit distracted.
Oh, then I got to let you go because
No. Sorry,
Sarah's there.
Don't worry about it.
All right, because I know Scott Walker just got off.
Scott Walker's Bobby Jones just got off. Scott Walker's before that, it's actually a pretty interesting scene here. I'm in between Scott Walker and Sarah Palin right now as we speak, which is always a great place for a former punk rock kid to be in, I guess.
So there've got to be a lot of your icons there, the cultural icons. It's got to be very exciting for you.
Well, it is kind of fun. I'm into the idea of history. I've been into politics, for years, and kind of seeing a lot of these things here is just really fun. One of the greatest joys I get is, as somebody who came of age politically in the Bush era, just seeing a lot of these former Bush officials, the boogeymen of my youth, sort of wandering up and down Radio Row, waiting to be recognized, waiting for someone to pull them over and do an interview with them. And it really is probably the greatest sense of schadenfreude, I can muster, just because, seeing Michael McKenzie or, John Bolton kind of walking up and hoping for someone to pull them over is just, it's a good feeling, especially because these were the, sort of people who were the enemies in the youth, I guess.
Maybe it'd be like me, because I came of age during the Reagan years. Maybe it'd be like me seeing Casper Weinberger walking down the hallway, who was indicted for numerous crimes, and Elliot Abrams and Robert McFarlane and some of those characters.
I often used to see Ed Meese getting Subway alone and looking very, very sad. So if that helps warm your soul, I'm happy to report that.
There you go. So this is going to go on for what? The next 3 days? 3 days?
2 days. Yeah, it ends on Saturday. Then we get the straw poll, and we're going to see who's going to pull that off. I guess the early prediction I'd go with is Walker, since he's getting a lot of buzz, followed by Ben Carson, since he sort of taking a Ron Paul approach and really packing this thing with a lot of his supporters.
Because that's the question I was going to ask you. Because normally these things are rigged even before they start, because everyone tries to get line up their supporters to vote for it. And so you think it's going to be Walker and then Carson?
Yeah. No, I mean that's sort of how this goes. It's not a scientific whole by any stretch of imagination, but we know with Herman Cain, it was this kind of conservative conference thing that can really launch somebody in the spotlight. Herman Cain won this Herman Cain earned his place in the sun after he did well at a Florida version of one of these. So this can always give somebody a much needed little bounce in terms of publicity, although the effectiveness of it in the long run remains to be seen.
Well, I haven't thought of the Pizza Man in quite some time.
I mean, he's fun. He was fun to laugh.
He was perfectly fun. I understand isn't he the guy who took over for Neil Bortz when Bortz retired from talk radio?
Yes, he did. He's still living in Georgia. I got a phone call from him a little while ago, and I missed it, and so I have the voice message on my phone just because he has a great voice. I wanted to keep that one around.
Oh no, you got to keep that.
Yeah,
he's got a radio voice much like the guy in New York that I love, the good pastor James David Manning. I don't know if you know him. Just brilliant. I mean, he's insane. He's probably one of the craziest people I've ever heard speak, and one of the craziest people I've ever interviewed. But he's got a great voice.
Yeah, no, I believe it.
Simple.
Sorry. No, I mean, next to you, though. I mean, you're the king of radio. We all know that.
Well, good for pandering to the host. I appreciate it.
Everyone keeps on coming up to me asking, "Where is Rick Smith?" Your fan base is out here in record numbers. So.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. That's great. Justin, I appreciate it. I look forward to our next update from Crazy Pack. Thanks so much.
Fantastic. Give it a good one.
All righty. No, I would love to go to that. And one of these years, I think it was because I completely forgot about it. It's off my radar, but I think I would love to go to that and just sit and talk with Crazy. I do. I think so. And to kind of take us out, a little Herman Cain.
Upside down, Joker, you someone to turn around. Herman Cain, he's done it before, he can do it again. This train's coming to town like a hurricane. Herman Cain, get on board, the Herman Cain train. Get on board, get on the Herman Cain.
From Lisbon, Portugal, this is your World in Two. I'm your host, Luke Vargas, with the Talk Radio News Service. There's been a lot of talk lately about the strategic risks caused by U.S. military officials releasing details on an upcoming coalition attack on Mosul, the Iraqi city controlled by the Islamic State. But that decision does not appear to be weakening the commitment of some other coalition countries. Australia and Canada are implementing tough anti-terror laws, while France has begun to confiscate the passports of those suspected of traveling to Syria. Denmark and the UK are preparing to do the same. And earlier this week, the government of New Zealand announced it would send more than 100 defense forces to Iraq to help train the Iraqi army. But what might seem like a politically safe decision has caused quite a lot of debate. Prime Minister John Key delivered a blistering speech yesterday in Parliament calling out members of the opposition Labour Party for breaking rank with their ideological peers around the world and attempting to block the deployment on political grounds.
Labour in New Zealand, when it comes to sending New Zealand forces for training, says no. They say no. But the interesting thing is the Labour opposition in the UK, they say yes. The Labour opposition in Australia, they say yes.
Detractors of the deployment suggest the government is ill-prepared to respond to several worst-case scenarios, like a potential kidnapping of a Kiwi soldier. But Key was adamant that decision merely came down to having guts.
When people are out there being beheaded, I'm sorry, but this is the time to stand up and be counted. Get some guts and join the right side.
For more global news headlines, visit talkradionews.com.
Whenever a corporation issues a statement declaring that it is committed to, quote, treating consumers fairly and with respect, chances are it's not. After all, if the outfit was actually doing it, there would be no need for a statement. Indeed, this particular claim came from Encore Capital, one of our country's largest buyers of bad consumer debt. And it definitely has not been playing nice with the people it browbeats to collect overdue credit card bills, car loans, etc. New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman found that Encore, based in San Diego, filed nearly 240,000 lawsuits against debtors in a recent 4-year period, using our courts as its private collection arm. Problem is, Encore's bulk filing of lawsuits are rife with errors, out-of-date payment data, fabricated credit card statements, etc. Tons of them are missing original loan documents, payment histories, and other proof of debt. Debt predators, however, scoot around this lack of facts by simply having their employees sign affidavits asserting that the level of money owed is accurate. Judges, overwhelmed by the unending flood of lawsuits filed by Encore et al., have accepted those affidavits as true, thus ruling in favor of the corporations. But Schneiderman found that, surprise, affidavits were simply being rubber-stamped by company employees who didn't have time to check for accuracy. An employee of one large debt buyer testified that he was having to sign about 2,000 affidavits a day. This is Jim Hightower saying, this is no minor scam. 1 in 7 adults in the U.S. is under pursuit by debt collectors. It's hard enough for struggling families to claw their way out from under the economic crash without having lying, cheating, predator corporations twist the court system to pick their pockets and shut off their hope of recovery.
Hightower's commentary is brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown. From Wall Street to Washington, this monthly newsletter reveals who's doing what to whom and why. Check it out, hightowerlowdown.org.
Life can be a challenge. Life can seem impossible. It's never easy when there's so much on the line. But you and I can make a difference. He's working on to understand the power that's
I gotta wonder if there's actually, if they've now come up with a Herman Cain Pokemon. My former producer Brett, he threw that together, and and I guess he was a fan of it, and he kept thinking of Herman Chew or something like that. Jeez, imagine that guy was a front runner thanks to Crazy Pack, coming out of the Crazy Pack, a front runner to be president. Mr. Godfather's Pizza, but again, like a lot of these folks who, they are around the edges. Never really thought that they would ever be thrown into the limelight. So, did a lot of questionable things. And as soon as they got plopped into the fishbowl, they didn't hold up to the scrutiny. And I think that's a lot of us. And then there's part of me that goes, I don't know that I want someone who's perfectly transparent and has been thinking of their life in the fishbowl. But I also don't think I want someone who, what is. Just kind of makes you wonder, do we want someone who's perfect? Or do we want someone who's a good leader, who's got good ideas? I don't know. Not that Herman Cain had any really great ideas. One of my favorite Cain's ideas was every piece of legislation would be no longer than 3 pages long, 2 or 3 pages. That's it. Every piece of legislation had to be boiled down to the simplest, lowest common denominator of 2 to 3 pages that you could read at dinner. That you and I, we could solve the financial crisis. We can regulate the financial industry or regulate the healthcare industry with 2 or 3 pages. Because Bush did it. Look, he bailed out the financial industry with I guess it was 1 or 2 pages, right? He gave away $750 billion, and there were no strings attached. And look how well that worked out for them. Not so good for you and me, right? And a lot of these Republican ideas are just failures. And I look at one that's been prevalent in the angry Republican Party, this idea that we're gonna drug test people, because there's this belief that all of these people are drug addicts. If you can't find a job, or if you're unemployed, or if you need food stamps, you must be a drug addict, and we're gonna test you. Well, the folks over at Think Progress did a nice little mock-up of the states that have done this. Now, understand, you've got Scott Walker, who's now running for president, and I got to be honest, I never really thought, and I probably should have 4 years ago, that if everything went the way it's gone, that this guy could be the presidential nominee. I doubt it. I think he will falter. He's not going to hold up under the glass. But I guess I should have, but what he wants to do is beyond just food stamps. He wants to, test people who are unemployed, and let's test everybody who needs any help whatsoever. But here, the good folks over at Think Progress did a little mock-up. Now, understand, I've said this before. Testing for people for food stamps, testing them for drugs is kind of a waste of money, and it's merely to prevent people from getting food, which I think is really dumb. But what we found out in state after state is that they're not catching really anybody. I look at Missouri, that spent some $340,000 testing nearly 40,000 people. They came up with 48 positive tests. Oklahoma tested around 3,400. They came up with just under 300 at a cost of $385,000. You look at Utah, who tested, almost 10,000 people, got 29 positive results at a cost of about $65,000. Kansas, another one. They spent 40 grand to catch 11 people. And you go, couldn't you use that money a little bit better? Mississippi, for instance, they spent, and I don't know how you test 3,600 applicants for $5 grand, but they caught a whopping 2 people, which I guess, honestly, truthfully, dollar for dollar, Mississippi did the best, right? Tennessee spent just over $5 grand, according to Think Progress, testing 16,000 people. They caught 37. And you go, well, what? Are we going to continue wasting this kind of money? Couldn't we do something better with it? And the answer is no, because the Republicans love to punish people. It's about punishment. That's simple. And that's going to be the frame that we continue to see. Anyway, I appreciate you tuning into the program. If you missed any portion of it, thericksmithshow.com is where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on your smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick at thericksmithshow.com. Again, thanks for being here. Look forward to having you back again tomorrow.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Together, we can make America better. Email rick at thericksmithshow.com or interact with us anytime at thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
It's coming like the time.